Before we actually start this video, I must, of course, give a fair warning. These games are somewhat lewd and explicit in nature. Nothing that reaches too far, but it's necessary to advise you before continuing. I'll largely be censoring some material or simply be referring to it without showing you, of course, the info I'm talking about. So I apologize to those who think the censoring will ruin the essay, but it's necessary unless the YouTube gods are kind. That being said, let's dive in. So, why these games in particular? Is there some long history or fascination with this game, or some weird childhood obsession? No, I was buying games from a Japanese auction site, got the second game's limited edition for shockingly cheap, decided why not get the first one, which was a little more rare and expensive. As much as I want to, of course, a good box, this one is, albeit inferior, costed $50 less than, and the side that it sits on in my display is undamaged, so that's good. No, it's not. This is me just rationalizing my decision. I should have just spent the extra money, and I deeply regret not ponying up the extra cash, because the rip haunts me now. Anyway, published by Nippon Ichi Software, the same developers of Void Terrarium, and developed by Image Pooch, released the first game in 2010, initially in Japan only on PSP, then to Vita to be a Japanese exclusive again in 2013, and then released in North America February 2015, before finally being published on Steam in 2017. It then had a sequel which was released in 2015 again for Japan only, this time just to get a Vita release in 2016. Now, unlike the last installment, it hasn't released to Steam, so I'll be playing that one via emulator even though I own it. Now, I'm sad to say that technically that Criminal Girls is a trilogy of games, but I can only play 2 of them, and it's not even that one's in Japanese and I'd have to feel my way around the game. I'm not sure it exists anymore, or if anyone still has it really. See, Criminal Girls X, or aka Escape from Ashura, was the 3rd installment of the franchise, and was supposed to be released worldwide in 2020, and had pushback to 2021. Now technically, it did get released. See, looking at the Campfire website, it released in 2021, and was apparently available in the Japanese App Store on October 21st, 2021. According to Sensor Tower, and then was delisted in 2022, so it was active at the very least 2 or 3 years ago, dating this video to 2024. And this version apparently works as a non-gacha version, so supporters were able to download and play it until support was cut for the download at least in 2022. As well, there might be a way for a subscriber to release this version though, I'm not 100% certain. I'm still hopeful the game will see the light of day. Unfortunately, that's where my trail ends in terms of concrete information, though speculatively it seems like Mikage might still be working on it and other games. I'm not sure because, well, the Japanese Twitter account of Mikage LLC is dead or delisted, but his personal account is still active, though it's privated, but its description reads as Twitter translated as follows: I'm currently on a hiatus from social media, I post occasionally, I'm working hard at my job and my English. DMM English Conversation Legend. Now, while the last post seems to be from summer 2023, I'm going to remain hopeful and say that maybe sometime maybe we'll see it in the future. If not, praying someone else releases the APK and I can somehow snatch it up at some point. If not, it might just be an actual piece of lost media that a select few might have, because I did find that there are SD cards that contain the game on them and was part of the crowdfunding effort. So if someone somehow gets a hold of it, I want it, please. Also, would like to give an honorable mention to Clan Senkai, a game I found while searching for info on Criminal Girls X, and there are a couple more which I'll mention later, which was an MMORPG app partially developed by Ryo Mikage, which, as far as I can tell, is actually lost, as the only real evidence of the characters and gameplay and whatnots is just 4 YouTube videos by a small YouTube channel, as opposed to my vast size with a combined total of 34 videos and the official Clan Senkai channel, which has a little less than 10k views. There was also another game, but I'll probably discuss Senkai and the other project towards the end when I'm discussing X. Now, continuing, there's no interviews I can find on the development of the first two games, however there are a handful of interviews about the censorship, at least the North American censorship. So before we continue, fair warning, there are again risque elements to this game, and well, that wasn't great for censors and overseas markets, and to date, this video, or at least its writing, just like Stellar Blade, this didn't sit well with people. They explain this in interviews or both games, with the basic summary being ESRB has different standards in North America than Japan, so yeah, the changes aren't super drastic, so alright, let's descend into the depths of Hell's Prison and meet the inmates. Criminal Girls Invite Only. One occupies the basic story as follows. You, a young man, are sent to Hell and are tasked with saving the souls of several girls, the ultimate goal being that you'd want to revive the girls somehow. It's a brief little introduction to what is ultimately a somewhat fan-servicey game. Opening, there's a handful of things that you realize as you begin to play the opening, and it really racks up some details pretty fast. So you are a corrections officer, given the title of instructor, or at the very least you are one chosen to. When you went to sleep, for some reason, you were chosen to help the 7 inmates, dubbed delinquents, with the help of fellow instructor named Miu. As she gives you the rundown and slaps you, I think, about 15 times. In the process, why? Because she's a sadist, I think. Anyway, we also learn from our introductions that 3 of the girls we're supposed to be in charge of have run away, leaving us with Kyoko, Kisaragi, Ran Rando, Sako Katagi, and Alice Mizuno. Their first interaction with us via the little introductions Miu sets up for us, and it's fairly nice. Kyo Kisaragi's first impressions are she's money-hungry and judges people exceedingly quickly by metrics of her own wealth assessments of people. Ran is a kind of misandrist. She says she hates men early on, but throughout the game effectively starts letting in it's mostly certain types of men she despises, and admittedly, and justifiably for a good reason. Sako Katagi, a girl who seemingly unhealthily is obsessed with her little sister, and is effectively the muscle-headed brute of the team, and Alice Mizuna, a girl who has psychic abilities and appears to be too smart for her own good. Following the introductions, we're also introduced to the baddies of the game, dubbed convicts, which are people who have committed serious and unforgivable sins, with the possible exceptions of the bosses and mini-bosses who might have been part of the initial trial system, or demons. We're also introduced into the acquiring system in the game, dubbed motivation. Now, how do you motivate, is the question. Spoilers for the sequel, but it lays it straight on the table. You use S&M to motivate the girls to give them new abilities or stat increases. The first game includes such motivational tools as a riding crop, stun rod, weird goo, a feather duster, and I think your bare hands? Now, there are a couple of things that change from the Japanese version and the English version. One, while motivation is used in the English, the term that is used in Japanese is punishment, which apparently was changed due to making it seem more consensual, which makes the interaction a little more creepy, to be fair. It answers my questions throughout the game of how the hell is this motivating? It's just punishment. 2, extra fog during the motivational cutscenes, which censor some of the more risque elements. During these motivation scenes, there are also vocal performances, to say the least, but those are removed in their entirety, which there's a setting called Be Quiet, which puts a face mask and costs twice as much of the criminal motivation points. It's meant to muffle that audio effectively, but is useless in the English version. But having learned that, it makes that first iteration of why they made the censorship into punishment make it feel a little more worse. Eventually, as we continue to defeat the convicts, we come to a point where Miu says she can't reach the Reformation Committee, and opts to move ahead without us in hopes of reaching them. She reiterates that she doesn't want us to follow her up and wait, as it's incredibly dangerous. Sako then immediately suggests we follow her because Yuko, her sister, is out there somewhere. Rand comments that we're a coward for hesitating, and Kisaragi just doesn't trust Miu, and Alice can hear someone calling for her. So instead of holding our ground as an instructor should consider, again, we're in hell. We begin to follow her. So we begin progressing through cell block 832's floors, focusing now on getting used to the mechanics and whatnot, as well as making sure you understand what's going on. This time is also meant for you to do a handful of motivations, because if you don't reach at least one level of motivation, your characters are incapable of doing anything. Even when we're accepting new members, we still have to reach this first step of motivation before they can actually get in action. Reaching a gate, we walk past it to find Mew confronting a much stronger convict. They all appear as aberrations in the overworld, but Mew was actually fighting a sort of demon T-Rex, which is fascinating to look at. So of course we rush in, save her, and confront the beast. It's admittedly not the most exciting boss fight, as you're doing one or two basic attacks at this point. We beat it and a gate opens and Mew disappears, but looks like she walked past us bleeding. Eventually, everyone debates whether to continue at this time, and while most everyone wants to continue, Kisaragi doesn't like the idea of pressing forward, and Alice is hesitant, but is easily persuaded, especially with a voice still calling her. So Kisaragi joins us simply because being left behind is worse than the alternative. So we continue. The game lays out that there are 4 trials going forward, and we're trying to find Mew as well. Our first is the trial of Sticky and Muddy. The next floor is a strange overgrown concrete jungle, and Alice can see visions of Yuko along with 2 other girls, and Ran finally speaks out, talking down to us for being too slow to press on and search for the girls. Of course, we reply we literally just climb the stairs with them, and she doesn't relent on her statement though. We also get a bit of clarification of Alice being a clairvoyant, which allows her to, of course, have these visions. We then come across 4 girls, and immediately it comes off as odd to the group since Alice is the only one who saw the extra girl. The girls run away from us, I think speculating we're a convict, and we of course go after them. Catching up to the group, we see the 4th mystery girl run past a gate, and it closes behind her. We then begin to use the switch system, which is pretty basic as it somewhat implies. Press a button somewhere, door opens. Getting to the next floor, we're stopped, and apparently Sako has a lead on Yuko by using her scent, which will end up being relevant later. Yuko runs behind another door, which locks behind the group. We catch up to Yuko, and then the group and the girl are now talking across a ravine. There's a switch right behind Yuko, and Ran tells her to press it, and while she's literally 10 feet away from the switch, she begins panting, saying she's too tired. She asks for some medicine, and while I tell her to press the button and then we can help her, Sako says we need to help her right now. So she sniffs out a medicinal herb nearby. We chuck it across the ravine, and Yuko complains that it's yucky, and says she doesn't like it, and then asks for Sako to get her an ice pack. So we're forced to stop again and look for an ice pack for this girl. We get it to her, and now she wants a drink, and Kisaragi rightfully complains that this is getting burdensome, just to get Yuko to open a door so we can help her. But we go get her a drink anyway because Sako insists, and lo and behold, she's being attacked by a convict at this point. She opens the gate to assist her, and of course we have to oblige, and it's surprisingly a tough fight. When saving her, she cries, saying that she was scared and looks for validation from her sister for being brave. When asked why she left the cells and ran away, Yuko says she can't remember as her memory is fuzzy. So, to describe Yuko, if Sako is the brawn and then she's the brain of their duo, she acts in battle as our healer effectively and later applies buffs as well. Eventually we also find our first team attack, which scattered around the map are a bunch of additional secret tomes which give us team attacks. Team attacks, as implied, require 2 characters to be on screen at the same time. Each character has 2, and it's 2 from their respective action. Next, we encounter at a gate our next character, Tomoe. We tell her there might be a switch nearby and that she should look for it, to which she has us wait while she looks for it. She does open it after like 5 minutes, and Kisaragi for some reason complains, even though we just saw what Yuko put us through. She does, however, walk into another gate which also closes behind her, so she goes off to find another switch. The others are annoyed, but to be fair, every gate hasn't slammed behind them when they entered into it, and won't just slam behind us most of the time. So we also learn about the girl's wishes during this period, which I'll probably explain all of them together post a certain chapter, mostly being within the individual endings, but what you need to know for now is that throughout this After certain levels of motivation, the girls ask our MC to do something or get something for them, and it'll either reduce the MP cost for their skills or reduce the motivational points needed to, do more motivations. Also noted, we find throughout the game these items which the characters will comment about, but they don't matter for a while till we get context. Everyone's annoyed at Tomoe for being so absent-minded, but she's in an unfamiliar place, that being hell, so it makes sense for her to kind of be absent-minded. So she joins us. Tomoe is our AoE character. She does big damage and hits, of course, multiple enemies. On the downside, she has pretty low defense and is pretty easy for enemies to take out. To describe her, she fits well the well-meaning but naive character. She's also clumsy and generally probably the nicest character to our MC. We then find our last party member for now, Shin. We initially encounter her without any issues, but she is a snob, dismissing the idea of joining up, looking down on our party and walking away. Catching up to her though, she got herself locked into a room. Our party questions why she wants to work with us now, even though she just abandoned us, and she effectively tells us it's purely circumstantial. She then points out there are 4 switches in the corners of this floor, and that if we simply press the switch on the far right, we'd set her free. When the party asks her how she knows about it, she says that she pretty much has some ill-defined logic about human nature before hurrying us along. Pressing it, however, causes a convict to show up behind her. She corrects herself that she meant the switch on the far left. Well, the left which opens a door, but not the one Shin is behind. So again, we're tasked with her simply realizing she made an error, and that the switch behind the door, or that the switch releases another convict. And at this point, Shin has given up trying to suggest which switch is it, and is now in full-on panic mode. Opening the last switch and getting to her, she still somehow finds a way to complain, as we're tasked with fighting the 2 released convicts. Shin then kinda reluctantly agrees to join the party while still finding a way to demean us. Shin's an interesting dual-type party member, utilizing moves dubbed operations to cause one or more character act without using their own MP. It's pretty weak in the beginning, but late game she became a surprisingly impressive unit. Until then, however, she's pretty average at best. After that, however, is our entire party has been assembled. We fight what I can basically call Rajang from Monster Hunter. Afterwards, the group celebrates our victory, everyone saying it was a tough but good fight. Yet when we try to say everyone showed guts, we're kinda ridiculed by Sako, saying she did it for Yuko and not for us, which I mean is true, but what we said wasn't any less valid, to be honest. That, however, concludes the first trial. The second is an area that apparently befitting is called the Hell, the Trial of Hard Fire. Everyone feels the heat of the area. Shin throws out it's 190 degrees Fahrenheit, but I seriously doubt that. So it becomes evident of what we're supposed to do, get out of here as soon as possible, so we try to rally everyone, only to once again be basically called an idiot. Shin going so far as to call us an eyesore, and Kisaragi agreeing with her. Tomoe at least seems to calm everyone down and get them back on track. So we explore the first floor. We encounter a convict named Cotter Ismay of the Ismay's family, a gang which runs this level of hell. He boasts about himself before everyone calls him ugly and lame, which of course infuriates him, so he goes off to fight us. He is far too powerful for us. Our attacks do some light damage, but unless we were stocked to the brim with items, this was just an intentional loss fight. So he mocks us, tells us to take on the 4 divas of the family, and says he'll be waiting for us at the top. And the 4 divas are our goal in the end. At the next floor, the group discusses their plans on what to do in our next encounter. Shin advocates for letting her lead them as the former guildmaster of a server, and while everyone is curious what she's talking about, she manages to sidestep it, and gets others to decidedly move forward to the next assignment. Encountering the first diva, it runs away, and repeatedly the team attempts to confront it, only to run away in time yet again. The group attempts to corner it, and Alice makes a vague divination of all the possible corners that you could stop it in, which Rin comments isn't particularly useful. So we go ahead around the area and stop at one of the spots. Shin doubts Alice's psychic abilities before she says it's just above them. It is in fact right above them, so cornered we fight it. Alice gets praised, which seems to make her happy, as we go off to fight the other three divas. As we explore, apparently someone brushes Tomoe's rear, and seeing as we're the only guy there, we're being accused only for Yuko and Kisaragi and Shin to also be felt up. Turns out, one of the divas is invisible and prompts us to chase him. He runs, and while we believe ourselves to corner him multiple times, he continues to run and Rin is particularly pissed. Tomoe supposedly comes up with a plan and has us walk around for a decent time. And when we arrive to where she wants, she stands in the center and, well, apparently she is sweating a lot, and the fabric of her clothing is, well, not as opaque, of course. The invisible perv ghost takes the bait, and we jump him. Defeating him, they praise Tomoe, who basically says she's used to harassment due to her train commute, which is concerning, but the others don't really address it, with Ran also taking note that she can't stand people who go after girls. The next floor, we find the next diva jumps past ledges, so it jumps back and forth till Yuko gives Sako orders to basically jump this almost impossible jump, which I might advise that the entire area is surrounded by lava, so if her sister missed, she would no longer have a sister. Eventually, we then corner it and fight, of course, emerge then victorious, but if it isn't evident yet, Yuko is very manipulative. So, next floor, there are a bunch of convicts, which we suspect one of them is the diva, and Kisaragi says she can determine which one is different. We end up getting them all in a circle, one another, and Kisaragi finds out who it is, somewhat with the help of Shin. Another boss fight, and everyone celebrates the two working together, and notes that Kisaragi can identify this due to her being around luxury brands and knowing what knockoffs look like. So we go to confront Ismay now, at this point. And there's no real build-up like the divas, and as the divas were of course the build-up to this fight. He's a fairly okay boss fight. His worst thing is he begins summoning new allies, which the way attacking works in this game is a pretty decisive decision, whether to use weaker multi-target attacks or stronger single hits. Ismay is dismayed by his defeat, and the group is riding high on this victory. We're going to escape hell as a team. Before then, though, there comes the third trial. Probably my favorite narrative chapter is our third floor trial of Cold Betrayal. It's an ice world, and very much like the idea of hell freezing over, and the team starts off still on high of the last win, and that we're now halfway through our trials. While exploring, we meet Himekami, the girl we met, or rather saw, with the other three in the first trial earlier. She decides to hang around us, but makes some vague mentions about danger, which makes her seem explicitly knowledgeable about the circumstances. She also makes a note that she was part of another Reformation party, but since has been separated from them. Pressing forward, we reach our first obstacle, and what is effectively the downfall of the Happy Times. The gimmick of this chapter is gates, with rules. Now, while it'd be fascinating if it let you make some of the decisions for this, it's understandable given the story's significance and necessary character work this chapter provides that it's mostly linear. Our first gate has the following condition. When a sinful trio sits and waits, 4 may pass beyond these gates. Everyone immediately realizes that this means leaving 3 party members behind, and well, no one is happy. Mikami chimes in and informs us of the gate gimmick and states that clearing the trial will of course open the gate so everyone could reconvene. So together through a game of rock paper scissors, we decide to leave behind Kisaragi, Ren, and Alice along with Himekami. Passing through, they make note about a keyhole in the gate, and now we believe that there might be a key to the gate, and there's quite a few scattered around the area. We find a key, head back, only to find the gates already open and no one's on the other side. And on the other side is another key, like our other one. Everyone's saddened by the fact that the others left, but we decide to press on. Heading up the next floor, our second obstacle gate appears. Sacrifice the power of one, and through this gate you may run. Everyone is hesitant about what to do, and so again they decide it's best to decide via rock, paper, scissors. And Yuko is the one who loses. Yuko is still hesitant to do so, so Sako steps up and takes the punishment for her sister. In gameplay, this has the effect that Sako is now a level 1 character, and is unable to level up throughout the entire duration of this area. She feels fine, but is cognitively aware that she's weaker, and now she begins to struggle with this as normally the muscle-bound character, and is the defense for her dainty sister. As we continue, Sako remarks that she's too weak now, and while everyone weighs in that it was necessary to clear the way, she's struggling with that in her own mentality. Now there's another gate, and it's yet another test. If two delay, then two may play. Well, everyone begins to decide who to leave behind, and Yuko loses first. While the group opts on who should stay with her, Sako of course says she'll stay with her sister, and that she'll always be there for her sister, only to be met by Yuko saying that she'd like to stay with Tomoe. This, of course, is a stab to Sako, and while Tomoe does accept, we end up leaving, and Sako feels betrayed, throwing effectively a tantrum saying she hates the pair. Literally, just around the corner is Kisaragi, Alice, and Himekami, all of us clueless to how we really wound up here. Himekami apparently found a key and let them through, though we don't know how we passed each other. The pair ask about the other two who we just left behind, and notes they split up from Ran at some point. After the group discussion, Himekami directly addresses Sako, saying she looks quite weak, and Sako tells her about the gate, to which Himekami says that those effects are permanent. Sako is terrified of this, and while Himekami gives a passing nod and that it might be different from what she saw in the past, it still hits Sako pretty hard. It doesn't help that following this we overhear Yuko and Tomoe talking. Yuko makes some statements about Tomoe being the first person she's connected to in the absence of her sister, and admittedly are pretty mild words, but Sako however interprets this as Yuko calling her a nuisance. Not long after, Himekami decides to go look for her original group, stating she'll be fine, and just leaves. We encounter another gate, and well, quite frankly, I'm surprised that no one mentions that Himekami walked in effectively a one-way, and we didn't encounter her again. Anyways, the next gate has another condition. With 1/4 left behind, an open gate 3 will find. Sako then volunteers to leave behind, depressed about being weak and semi-abandoned by Yuko, and when we confront her if she's really fine with this, she makes a blatant statement of, "Without Yuko, I have no value at all." And when the gate opens, further reiterates that she doesn't see the point of being revived without Yuko. Everyone doesn't feel right about this, but someone had to be left behind, right? Heading to the next floor, we find Ran, who's honestly fine, and she asks about the others. Shin fills her in, and Ran's outraged, blaming us for not being enough to keep the group together, and calls us like all the other guys she knows. Ran, annoyed, still joins our party again, and there's yet another gate, and the group is starting to get exhausted. This gate is yet another power sacrifice gate, and Shin loses again. And she tries to play it off, reverting to her snarky attitude as a somewhat coping mechanism. Lo and behold, we find Himekami again, and at this point everyone is confused, especially as when we ask about her friend, she says she doesn't have any. When we ask her about the gate, she claims she doesn't recall one. She leads us to yet another gate, and then asks about who were willing to sacrifice again. Everyone is still frustrated about it, but Shin says she knows she's just a nuisance, and takes it upon herself to just leave. Ran runs off after her, and Kisaragi puts on a front as if she doesn't care and reveals her frustration before leaving off, and leaving just us and Alice. Alice then leaves without a word, and when we turn around, so is Himekami. We are now by ourselves, so we approach the gate, and this time this is the rule. Leave a tribute of 1 criminal motivation point here and pass through this gate, free from all fear. At this point, a single fight will award us hundreds of CM. And so it's peculiar, and we're taken aback. The whole group left on the premise that someone was going to need to be sacrificed via Himekami, and no one even looked at the door in the chaos. We pass through the gate, which closes behind us, and we press forward alone. Our character reconciles as we walk about, with all the girls gone, what is the purpose of continuing down this path? And then we realize that we have to save them. that we of course can't just abandon those we are here to help. On our way back to the gate that just closed is open again, and we begin to search for the girls, eventually calling everyone's name, and somehow we find Alice, who's chanting a mantra, trying to get snow to cease. We come to realize that everyone, of course, still cares for one another. It's all been small misunderstandings about how to care for one another best that have snowballed into this disaster. So we shout their names once more, and somehow it begins to reach everyone. We see what's been happening as Yuko and Tomoe stayed behind, Yuko in order to protect her weakened sister, and somehow, as the two are fighting a convict, it disappears in front of them, and the gate is now open. Sako is still worried about Yuko, but hears out our voice, deciding that she has to be proactive and rejoins along with regaining her strength. Ran, true to her word, is protecting Shin, and hears our call, and Shin regains her strength. And then Kisaragi just kinda decides to rejoin. There's not really anything going on with her. And finally, before her, we call out Alice's name, and she rejoins our side. Everyone regroups and we make our rounds of apologies, thankful that everyone is safe and unharmed, everyone realizing that their misunderstandings were built on good intention. Everyone is present, of course, except Himekami. Rejoin the group then sees the mastermind, a boss convict called Desire. They reveal that the illusions were of course to separate us, to pick us off, so we fight, and it's fairly easy fight, and thank God, because it wasn't you'd have to do a whole lot of replaying the emotional scenes, as this game only has manual saves, and you've been in the narrative road for a while at this point. So annoyingly, the best part of the chapter is over, as by the end of this now, with the snow clear, the illusions of the floors are gone, which means the entire map is now filled with chests and other such goodies. That, however, means you have to go around and find everything again on foot. We then head to the top floor and have to fight Desire again, though we see Himekami just before she disappears practically behind the door. Desire does make note that he's surprised that we're worried about Himekami, meaning that the illusion isn't completely gone, which the girls note means Himekami isn't an illusion, and to that I'm a bit disappointed about their contextual awareness. Beating Desire again, everyone begins to wonder what Himekami's deal is, and was her party even real, and that she supposedly had, and that no one had ran into this entire time. No one sees the point in her lying, to which I have to say is fair, but Himekami is clearly suspicious, so they opt to recruit her when they encounter her yet again. The group also finally seems to be more accepting of our character, the MC, as we finally get a positive bit of reinforcement from Yuko. Now comes the fourth trial. Our fourth chapter is a classroom chapter and is dubbed The Memories at 16 o'clock, which then proves to be the most fascinating as we get to look into the girls' lives during high school, and what exactly shaped their way into hell. This also really made me realize that the girls represent the classic 7 deadly sins. Now, the name I'm not sure is directed at a time in high school in which all of the girls were in their junior or sophomore year, or whether it's simply referring to the time of 4 o'clock. Upon arrival, the girls are of course shocked to be in the school, considering that all the others felt fairly hellish at this point. But this feels like a giant school. So now we get to break down the characters as individuals, as the story mostly follows their interactions. I'm just going to be relaying basic framework before we delve into this further. The chapter we confront the sins of the respective sinners we see, ghosts or visions of the girls' past, or people in the past who represent something along the floors, and trials as we've found a myriad of miscellaneous items which are symbols of their sins. So, Tomoe begins what is this chapter's gimmick, confronting the sins that need to be redeemed before the prisoners can reawaken and revive outside of hell. We see several students in her high school days doing nothing but complimenting her about her appearance, her intelligence, and her personality. As we continue, even though the characters are growing obsessed with her, jealous of everything, people's relationships being damaged by Tomoe flaunting her stuff. A shadow self, another trend in this chapter, confronts her about an incident involving her cousin and what she did. We leave to a different floor and gather an item that represents her sins, Tomoe's being a wedding invitation. We return the item to Tomoe, and she reveals to us that the incident was getting the groom to vanish, likely either by promising to elope with her, or just outright causing him to cheat, which the game does not have the kindness of Elaborating, Tomoe vows to repent and not manipulate people, redeeming her. Now, my argument earlier about the 7 deadly sins has Tomoe represent the sin of envy, as it's less that she's jealous, but that she incites the jealousy of others intentionally. Kisaragi is a case in which I lean more so to the parent spoiling her, and while yes, Kisaragi doesn't act in a manner behooving of her, it's largely fine. As is expected, Kisaragi wanted to fit in with a group of girls who viewed her as poor. As the private school that featured rich girls who bought designer brands, she wanted to fit in. So what else does Kisaragi do but compensating dating? If you are unaware what compensated dating is, it's just as it sounds, people pay you to go out on dates. Of course, remember, at this time in her life though, Kisaragi is a high school girl doing compensated dating with grown men, which is more worrying for the danger that it presents. She relays that none of the relationships were intimate anyway, though one dude, when we're retrieving her item, offers her money to buy her socks, which is creepy to be frank. Confronting her shadow self, she realizes that buying the name brands and fitting in felt hollow and empty. She wasn't happy, and she comes to the realization quite well that her item being a cell phone with her client's contact information, which she breaks. She cries and is redeemed. We realize that she's, of course, the sin of greed. Ran is the most tragic because it leaves a little to the imagination and interpretation, but it's fairly harrowing. When we begin our story, we are immediately exposed to a camera flash on the floor, which causes her to freak out. Exploring the classrooms, we find her in various photos, of which are only described to us of her in peep shots. She only refers to the photographer as him throughout, and we never directly address it, but the way the photos demonstrate and are described of her at a young age, and the what I would likely guess are less public areas, implies that this was a family member of hers that she actively tried to avoid. Somehow, her family either didn't realize or dismissed the photo taking, explaining her inability to escape it. Pretty naturally, she began to hate men in general, looking at them as taking advantage of women, so her generalization caused her to have violent outbursts with men approaching women, and it honestly makes the motivations more curious, as this seems to be exactly the type of behavior she expected of us, and yet she's much more open to it now in spite of that, which is a strange little character deviation. She ends up breaking the camera, which summons the shadow self, who applauds her, so we go find her item, which is a wooden sword, which both seemingly represents her time training in self-defense, while also representing her frequent use of violence to assault those around her. She ends up discarding it, freeing her of the worry, and realizing she just can't go through life assaulting people. Yeah, that's fairly self-explanatory. I feel like she views her actions as growing more harmful for her life, and others as a result. She, of course, naturally represents the sin of wrath, which she then cries and is redeemed once more. Confronting Sako's sin is awkward, because we see the interaction of the party learning just how much she is in love with her sister. We see Sako ask for Yuko's gym clothes after Yuko's gym class, claiming that she needs a change for her own gym class, only to go into another room just behind it and just huff her sister's gym clothes. Which is weirder now because if you remember in the first trial, she could find Yuko using her scent, and this is possibly how. Anyway, the ghost makes a clear show of Sako's lack of ambition and just how attached to the hip Sako really is to her sister. But we also learn that Sako isn't nearly as airheaded as we thought. The whole cute and innocent and silly character that she's been shown throughout the entire game is actually just an act to make her seem weaker, so that Yuko will want to take care of her. Sako apparently has this entire time been an A+ student who's failing her classes just so she can stay close to her sister. It's really weird, but I mean, it fits with her character up till then, and when retrieving her item, it basically confirms she's basically sabotaged her entire life so that she can be with Yuko. And of course, Sako comes to terms with living her own life and not necessarily attaching herself at the hip to Yuko to become her own person. She represents, of course, lust. And it's more of a wants to be loved than a more explicit lust, in spite of the clothing incident thing, I'm fairly certain. Shin is confronted by several classmates' ghost, in which they comment about her disappearing from school and generally being unliked. We also see a chalkboard filled with remarks about her, though she erases it before we could read anything further. A laptop we find is also filled with those, and Shin also smashes them. Shadow Self Shin then confronts her of her neglect for others and those around her. Finally, when retrieving her item, we find a lunch, and bringing it back to her, she reveals to us that it's a lunch her mother would make for her after becoming a shut-in. Seems either or after her time in high school, she became fairly depressed and found herself overindulging in MMOs and effectively shutting her off her family entirely. She of course vows to actually live her life from then on and try to be more outgoing. Shin's sin is gluttony, less so from her isolating but due to her excessive time playing MMOs. Yuko's confrontation differs from Sako in the sense we learn the exact opposite. The first people we meet in the floor talks about just how great Yuko is, and one makes some comparison towards her sister. We see Sako and her playing a piano, with Sako trying to help her before a recital. Yuko hesitates on taking the lesson, however, and confronting her shadow self, she assures us of just how great Yuko really is. We go to retrieve the item, and it's a scientific certificate. And when we go back to confront Shadow Yuko, turns out the science award she had been praised for years was a report done by Sako. So, was most of Yuko's schoolwork and a lot of bigger achievements for her. She confirms she's basically been using Sako her entire life, so she doesn't have to do work. She of course relays that she'll rely on Sako less, and she'll work harder from then on. Her sin, of course, is slothfulness. Alice proves to be a more fascinating case, as her story quickly involves a cult, and her actual name along with the title of Lady Yuri. We see nothing but praise from her classmates, along with Alice demonstrating her clairvoyance to them. Her shadow clone basically spells it out that Lady Yuri acted as a god figure for a cult, promising she could perform miracles, and while she does seem to still have some psychic abilities, it was obviously stretched a bit, and her family used these cheap tricks to keep up this illusion of omnipotent girl. This was, of course, for money and sweet, sweet donations to the cult, which made her parents happy, and so Alice would go along with it. This falsehood clearly weighs on Alice, as one fascinating case of the clones, when we retrieve the items, stating that they have cancer, but Lady Yuri healed her. So she likely didn't pursue chemotherapy, which is beyond what I expected for them to go down to. Her item is particularly interesting as it's a pamphlet of the Urian Church, which was the name of the cult which of course deified Alice. Alice clearly represents pride, as she effectively reveals in part in her false god. By the end, all the girls are basically reformed, having confronted this aspect of sin in their lives, which I'm putting in quotes here because I don't think some of these are super heinous sins. It's then that we confront the convict on the top of the school. On our way there, though, we see visions of which relays something almost indecipherable, but consistently has someone being referred to as a knight candidate. The boss convict this time is Despair, and is honestly quite difficult as she has 4 parts which each kinda have their own party members, an attack part, a status, and a healer caster part. So it takes a decent amount of time before I win. So the group is now celebrating after all the trials are over, which means we get to return to Earth. Though after all they've grown together, they're still a little sad, but bond over just how much they really care about one another. So we arrive on the last floor. This chapter really doesn't have a name, but we're on the Purgatory floor. As we emerge, though, Alice gets a premonition about something, and while everyone tries to assure her it's fine, there are more convicts, of course. We beat it, and after which everyone recalls Miyu, who we haven't seen since the first chapter, mentioned something was up with the program. Regardless, we have to press forward and undergo the warp gimmick. This isn't too bad, but it's a little annoying because the map doesn't illustrate which warps connect to which warp. So you'll have vague directions of where to go, and it's fine, just gets a tad tedious at points. By this point, I'm too far in. Alice then alerts us to a strong presence when none other than Himekami shows up, and she has lost her friendly demeanor. She wants us to die, or rather, wanted us to die, opting now to fight us. She transforms, I'm pretty sure, into a convict, which is a weird connection now with the sequel, but she's pretty much unstoppable and wipes us out with ease. She calls the group's terrible girls and tells us her ambition is to destroy the Reformation program. We also learn that she's the one who attacked Miyu. She attempts to wipe us out, but our character, being the good guy we are, steps in the way, grabbing Himekami's arm before she can cast her spell. and absorb the energy within our own body. Himekami questions our motives, and there aren't really any. We just want to save them as we succumb to the void. We wake up with the girls surrounding us yelling that we could have died, and generally with care for our well-being, but with them also now having some new resolve to fight Himekami. But we had to find a way to actually fight back, so we continue with no path in mind, but hopeful of something to come, and of course, something arrives. We eventually run into Miu, who's surprised we're even there and asks us why apparently we're visibly injured, before slapping us. We learn, of course, that Miu has some connection to Himekami. We ask for an explanation, and Miu praises us for getting the girls this far. Well, turns out she was the instructor for Miu 3 years ago. She informs us as well of the experimental program of knighthood, in which an innocent would be sent to hell to assist the sinful delinquents, and they're dubbed the Blameless. Well, the group decides we need to get a power boost via knighthood and begin pressing on that particular solution. As we continue through warping, we seemingly get to hear Himekami's voice, in which he apologizes and is recognized as a knight candidate. We also get to hear the voices of what must have been the other delinquents, as she's called lame and weak. The group realizes this was the conversation we heard in parts during the previous floor, and as it kind of figures, the group didn't respect Himekami as a knight candidate, and continue. Well, we go back and there see a vision of Himekami basically giving up and discarding the knighthood drug, deciding to succumb to whatever darkness. It may have been a convict from then on, or became one later, but that's largely irrelevant. The girls and I agree are sympathetic to Himekami's plight, because she should have never been brought to hell in the first place. She's a complete innocent sent down here by a program on a simple experiment, and discarded whenever they didn't need her, not even having the audacity to send her back, though maybe couldn't because they themselves had corrupted her. We find the drug and everyone collectively decides that we can save Himekami together and move forward with knighthood. Being the only person who would know about it, we go to Miu once again, who once again tells us and is surprised that we have even found the test drug. She's reluctant to help us, but when confronted with what we learned about Himekami, she relents, showing us a special portal. So now is probably the most interesting part of the game in terms of our decision making, as since we only have one drug, we can only get one knight. Each one of the girls has their own special shenanigans which will help us with the boss. Now, this part isn't particularly significant unless the story effectively really continues after we get a knight. Also, knighthood adds another girl's wish and motivation to the story, which allows us to get some narrative conclusion to the individual girls' stories. So I'll again explain the girls' motivations along with the endings here. We confront Himekami, who's sitting on the throne just before our gate to freedom, telling her we're going to save her. She laughs, saying she doesn't want to be saved. She wants to feel resentment. She wants to destroy everything and everyone knows that isn't her true feelings, and that after 3 years of this, she's obviously still in some pain. We fight her, and for 3 turns of that fight, she's immune to damage before our knight breaks a barrier which lets everyone to attack her. And the boss fight is rough and tanky and powerful, with some one-shot multi-hit targets, so after losing a bunch I grind for a bit, and she's much more manageable, but still very difficult. Eventually conquering the fight, we see our selected character landing the final blow on Himekami. She, of course, dismayed following it, thinks our sinners can't be redeemed and our characters only want to help her. To her surprise, feeling unworthy of this, Miu then calls out and approaches Himekami, apologizing for her leadership and failing to protect her. And while Himekami initially rejects Miu, Miu insists that she's genuine and tells her about how she's tried to amend her mistakes, and after seeing our work, offers to help Himekami escape, putting her own life in harm's way. The two then embrace Himekami, breaking down in tears, and eventually Himekami apologizes to us, and gives up on destroying the tower. Interrupting the touching moment is an alarm which apparently alerts the people in charge of Himekami's actions. The two vow to reform on their own, but insist we go ahead and reform, the Miu staying behind to help Himekami. This concludes the story thus far, but everyone has their own individual endings depending on who united. So, now we're going to address the order of the realizations from the 4th trial for the girls, so we'll be addressing the girls' wishes and their endings at this point. Tomoe. Tomoe's first wish is relatively simple. She's worried about having an unpleasant odor around the others due to her constantly moving around. She asks us to go find deodorant or antiperspirant. We then go retrieve some alunite, which apparently is a crystallized material, which is apparently really good for you as an antiperspirant, and so we crush it into a powder for her to use. She thanks us, and we move on with our lives. We'll also note a theme throughout Tomoe's request, and as somewhat noted throughout the story, is using her feminine charm to persuade our character into acting often. And though I won't note it every time it happens, but pressing herself on us if she wants something to make a decision in her favor is a frequent tactic she uses. Her second wish is fairly basic as well. Apparently the bedding in the rest area isn't good for her and irritates her skin. She of course asked for us to go retrieve some sort of material to help this, so we go find a beast-like convict, and after defeating it, get some beast leather, which is kinda terrifying. If you remember, convicts are kinda sinners, so in a roundabout way, even though they've transformed, what we've given Tomoe is a roundabout way of human leather. When we give it to her, she thanks us and comments that it's significantly larger than what she expects, but we continue. Tomoe's third wish revolves around the prior story, as she asks us to get her a needle and thread, so we go get her some silk, which is a pretty good thread, and then an obsidian needle, which would be an awful sewing needle, as obsidian is crazy fragile. We give it to her, which, upon receiving, informs us she plans to use the remaining leather into a cushion for the rest of the girls. We end up praising her, to which she requests that we praise her more often. Finally, once she becomes a knight, and this is true of all the girls, we get the fourth wish, which, for the most, if not, is about unlocking a specific area. Throughout the game, you've come across a ton of locked doors, or rather 7 to be exact. They'll all say they're locked, and in some way the girl will note, "Oh, unlock it this way," or "That'll be the start of the quest." After unlocking the area, I expected a chest or something, but all of them are just single rooms that use the same template as the area you're in. It's a little disappointing, however. The girl's wishes present there are the highlights, however. Back to Tomoe's final request, we find Tomoe working on sewing the other girls' clothes as they've begun to fray. While discussing this, the topic of her shoulders feeling stiff comes up, and she expresses the desire to take a hot bath. Recall that there might be a hot spring on the frost layer, and head there. When we arrive, we learn Tomoe and her family loved going to the hot springs as a yearly trip. Approaching the frost door, we get a rule, which is just, you need a ticket to get in. We go find a ticket, enter the hot springs. Before we enter, we leave the rest of the party outside. Tomoe tells the MC to turn around before disrobing. She asks us if we want to join her, and while there are several options, I effectively take the trying not to be indecent route, and that ends with us shyly sharing the hot springs. But apparently, if you emphatically say yes, Tomoe will outright say, "We're behaving shameless, but that's fine as she intends to be our future wife." Now, for the ending, once we go into the light, we find ourselves in the crowded street with Tomoe. We're out shopping and ask us what kind of these 2 shirts we like. She shrugs her shoulders, opting to buy us both. We tell her we don't need a present, that we're just happy walking together. She asks us if we're really happy, and we nod, and she of course is just as happy to be with us. She then says she hopes one day, in spite of her actions with her cousins, that she can walk like how you are now down the aisle. To which you give an emphatic nod, thus concluding Tomoe's story. Kisaragi. Kisaragi's first event is about her distaste for her prisoner's clothes and wants an accessory. She wants something sparkly but not something cheap, and when we go to look for one, we find a nice piece of glass which she readily accepts after we tie it into a necklace. She surprisingly finds it beautiful, and while she comments about the poor quality of it, estimates its value to roughly $40 and leaves pretty happy. Our second wish with Kisaragi is her stating that she wants some jewels, specifically 2 of them, both looking alike. We go to the Inferno layer, find 2 jewels, and hand them over to Kisaragi. Turns out the jewels were meant for eyes for a stuffed bear she makes. And it's pretty cute, and she turns to us proud of her creation. Apparently, making stuffed animals is her hobby. Slight note, though, if she's sewing stuffed animals implies she has both needles and thread, which she could have shared with Tomoe when we'd give her to her, though she's grateful. Her third wish is a continuation of this, as getting cotton so she can make some more stuffed animals. So we go to the frost layer, grab what seems to be proper permanent permafrost called Enduring Snow, and give it to her. She tells us to wait for a moment and quickly makes us a stuffed animal as thanks, which is really cool. Finally, her fourth wish is one of the more heartfelt ones, as she wants to kind of relax, wanting to return to somewhere similar to her grandmother's house. We go get a key to an area in the morass, which, upon opening, reminds her of her grandmother's home in the countryside. She recalls about how she loved her grandmother and explains she's the one who taught her how to make stuffed animals. It reveals this much softer side of her personality that she'd obfuscated around her luxury addiction. And it's very touching. Maybe one of my favorites of the Fourth Wishes. Kisaragi's ending is pretty cute. The two of you find yourself presumably sharing an apartment. She's attempting to cook for the first time and is wearing an apron. Apparently she notices we like an apron and asks us if we like girls in aprons, to which we apparently make a comment about nude aprons, to which, being the tsundere-esque archetype, somewhat yells at us. Attempting to cook as well, she messes up and makes what sounds like a fairly unappetizing curry. She comments that she's happy, even if together we're still fairly poor, but at least we are together. Ran. Ran's wishes are very similar to one another, or rather, the first three. To largely summarize the content of them, I will say she wants to fight convicts to get stronger. During her first wish, she charges in recklessly to fight, which forces the other girls to follow in after her. We successfully beat them, after which we scold Ran about her carelessness, and while she's a little mad about the scolding, she's grateful we let her do it otherwise. Second wish we fight means to relieve stress, to which she grows embarrassed, telling us she'll explain later why she's embarrassed. Her third wish, however, begins with her wanting to restrain herself, but wants one more fight, so she can change later. We do 3 fights, and then she comes to realization that this hadn't helped her figure anything out, but thanks us for indulging her selfishness. Ran starts her last request actually with Shin and Kisaragi arguing with each other. Ran steps in and breaks them apart, acting and kinda confirming, at least from a general perspective, that she's respected as the leader of the group. She says she's not used to responsibility, and kinda lets us know that she herself wants to be spoiled for once. We both decided that going to an area in the classroom layer would be a good place to go relive a bunch of her old memories. Learning about her, we learned that she was obsessed with volleyball. She loves drinking milk, which I've learned outside of the US may be an oddity, so that's kind of novel, at least from a Japanese perspective. And then we enter an isolated room. She remembers that she had good memories, though she starts to downplay her role. She then rests her head on your shoulder, saying that she's glad we're open-minded and caring towards her. The two of you then just stand there silent, looking out the window. Ran's end is interesting, as the two of you sit near a riverbank, the two of you are drinking coffee as a dessert after having a picnic. We happen to yawn, though when we go to lay our head on the ground, Ran offers her lap as a pillow. She runs her hands through our hair and pontificates that she didn't think that she'd ever fall in love, but finds herself happy that we're around each other. Tired, we feel comfortable and at ease falling asleep in her lap. Sako. Sako's first wish is her noticing her sister has some sleeping problems, so wants you to go get her a memory foam pillow, so Yuko can sleep better. Get some rubber, which in no way would resemble memory foam, I think, but apparently is close enough for Sako to give it to Yuko. The second wish turns out the rubber pillow isn't that great, but not because it was uncomfortable, but because the rubber pillow is green. So our next quest is to go get a nice pillowcase for her. We make do with a spiderweb that apparently we can fashion into a pillowcase, which satisfies Sako, and we then ask her what Sako wants, and she says she wants to remain with Yuko. The third wish, Sako observes everyone enjoying playing together and notices that Yuko is a bit hesitant. She decides that she can find a game that everyone can play, and then Yuko will feel included, so she suggests we go find cards. We can't find cards, but find a chess set, and Sako claims that she's never seen a chess set before, though I doubt that somewhat because at this point this wish is accessible prior to the classroom arc, which if I had to guess is her still trying to act aloof. Anyway, the chess set appeases her and we go on our merry way. Sako's final request is hilarious though, as she actually wants to spend time with anyone outside of Yuko, and thematically makes sense because this is post-classroom realization. So she takes us to the Frost Layer. There we encounter another one of those requirement gates, which is closed before us. It asks Sako to relinquish which she holds most dear, which she refuses to relinquish. It then asks her to relinquish the second thing she holds most dear. She refuses to give up Yuko, which, if it isn't clear, I think she's implying at this point we're the thing she holds most dear. And the door laments and says the third thing, which apparently is cocoa due to her association with it and good memories with Yuko. So we go out, get some cocoa, return to the door, and get access to the room. We follow Sako inside to her room, relaying that she's going to become more and more independent and wants Yuko to be even better, and then asks us to help her, still comparing herself to Yuko in the end. And we then just hang out apparently. The twins have similar endings with Sako. We end up at a dessert buffet, of which Sako ends up bringing us one of everything. She gets a strawberry shortcake and then remarks that it's odd having a strawberry for once, as that's usually the side that Yuko likes. In her haste of eating the shortcake, she apparently gets icing on her cheek, and in classic fashion, we wipe it off, to which she blushes at. She then says we're like her big brother, before saying she wants to be with us together forever, to which we pinky promise to do so. Yuko's first wish is her wanting something sweet, citing her hard work up till then as reason enough. She suspects Miyu might have left something at the prisoner floor. We find just 3 candies on the ground, which she likes. We tell her to share with Sako, but the way she replies makes it seem as though she's going to eat it by herself. Second wish, Yuko is thirsty. We go get her some water because apparently she spilt the water we got when we first recruited her. We get her a drink, she drinks it, kinda. You know, typical stuff, she's grateful. Third wish, he wants us to find 2 important items for her, and it's a heart sticker and letter set, 2 gifts that Sako gave her. Which, fairly basic and is still little conflicting given that the gift is about to be used. So Yuko's fourth wish is that she actually wants to write a letter, with a letter set, so she asks us to find a pen which is on the school layer and is special to her. So we go search the area and find a bunch of different pens, of which none of them are good enough until we find the correct one. Eventually we find the right pen, handing it to Yuko, who goes off to write the letter. Kisaragi then approaches us, handing us Yuko's letter, joking that now in Sako's stead, she's taken her place. So we went to where Yuko told us in the letter. When we approach, she comments that she's gotten stronger as evident by her getting on her own, yet she had a search for a pen. She does admit her weakness, but vows that she's going to change and pulls her hand to her heart, and which I can't tell exactly what that proves, but that concludes her revelations. If it isn't clear, I'm pretty biased to disliking Yuko as a whole at this point. Her story has infuriated me. Ending, apparently, we're enjoying what I assume to be black coffee at a resort-esque location while Yuko eats a strawberry tart. We're apparently at a fairly feminine cafe, which she apologizes for us taking us to a fairly out-of-character place. We assure her we're perfectly fine here. Ecstatic that we're fine, she ends up feeding us a strawberry, making note that the staff are looking at us at this point. Yuko then makes a note that she's going to spoil us, just like Sako spoiled her, as she continues to feed us cake. But we're happy that we're living the sweet life. Shin's first wish, she talks about being a guild master and showing specific coordination with a team, so she needs a specific group to be a convict on an earlier floor. We pass, and she makes some remarks on before returning to reading her book. The second test, she has us look for a book which is on the floor where we met her, and the others. There we find the Divine Comedy, which we give it to her. She asks us if we know about the book, and asks us what it says over the gates of hell, which is of course, abandon hope all ye who enter here. She's impressed that we know it, but when we picked up the book, we just so happened to apparently open it to that particular passage, so if you didn't know, it tells you in the game. It's more interesting as a narrative tie-in though, as within the Divine Comedy, Gabriel, an angel, helps Dante to escape hell in a similar fashion to the Reformation program, though less about trials and more about observing hells here. The third, we see Shin get curious about hell's design philosophy, so we decide to investigate some documents Miyu have supposedly left behind. We go find a box which tells us there's a box on the fire floor, along with the location of the key. So we go get the key, find the box, and upon unlocking it, the papers burn instantaneously due to the heat, or at least somehow burned within the box. Regardless though, she thanks us with a bow, glad that we satiated in some part her desire. Shin's final request has us start with Shin calling us our name before asking us to perform our last test. So she asks us a question about who we would save if there was a shipwreck out of everyone. Before we can answer though, she wants us to get in a private room when we're alone. So we find the door in the frost layer, which is labeled Makoto's room. Presumably this is a replica of her actual room, which she recalls that if it's her room, the key is probably on the classroom area. Grab the key, head back to the room, entering in with the two of us. So with the two of us, we give her the answer. For my choice, I chose the "we'll save everyone" answer, which Shin says is about what she expected. She's somewhat satisfied by the answer, but wants to let us know that she wants to stick by our side. She leans against us and says she was effectively afraid of being alone and tested us so that we didn't test her, because she thinks she would fail said test. She talks about her experience as a shut-in sheltering herself from the outside world, but now she wants to live her life and become better. Shin's ending again is great as she marvels at the fish within an aquarium. Apparently as a kid she was scared of cupping, but she's glad that she came with us today. She's thankful that now, having resolved her sin, she can live her life full, and makes a comment that she made us food. She then starts to run off to whatever exhibit's next, and we grab her hand as the two of us run off together in the aquarium. Alice. Alice's first wish is about hearing a voice asking to take her somewhere on the floor. Getting there, she asks us about hearing the voice, and apparently our character heard something. She then does a small ritual in the corner before returning by our side, as she looks satisfied, which I can assume is she's probably did a prayer of some kind for a weary soul, given what we know about Alice's clairvoyance/supernatural powers at this point. Her second wish is she's distressed, giving us the most vague instructions to take her somewhere on the first trial. She claims that a locale we visited was a strong spirit vein, and Alice tries to explain what exactly that means and that she can use the flow, but our character seems to stop listening at some point, assuming that it's fine as long as Alice gets it. The third wish she requests we find holy water, which we find on the ice layer. She then throws the water off a bridge in the fire area, and we confront her on why she did that exactly, and she says that the fire god is satisfied. I have no idea who the fire god is, though. We then ask her if she did it to get a wish, which she tells us no. Apparently she says that it gives her courage. Our character doesn't understand, admittedly. I'm not sure as well, but learned during the classroom whether she is actually hearing voices of a god or if she's just doing this to psych herself up, though since we're in hell, I'd have to guess her clairvoyance is actually enhanced in hell. If, again, another guess. Finally, her last wish, we find ourselves in the fire layer. At first, we get a key to access a door in the classrooms just before then. We find ourselves overlooking the lava lake, and Alice begins explaining some of her feelings and telling us she'd like to be more honest from here on out. She's thankful for the honesty of the others and showing her by example on how to do so. She then asks for our help keeping her honest before giving us a kiss, presumably. Then the two just sit there staring at the lake for a little bit before we move on. In Alice's ending, we find ourselves at a shrine, and she comments that she played here when she was little, bringing up that her church duties soon prevented her from doing so. She finds a kitten and ends up moving to pet it. She then relays that she didn't need or have any real friends, but now she has you and the others. The cat then meows in response and says even now she's already Alice's friend. Alice then comments that we're not only a friend, however, and we then give her a head pat, and the two then hope for the gentle happiness that it doesn't end. That ends our individual endings, however, you'll have to face Himekami's boss fight one more time. I personally chose the Tomoe save file I had because she was the one I had the easiest time beating the boss with. Now, we fight it one last time, and we get the original ending cutscene. We enter the white light for everyone to escape back to Earth and trigger one of the individual endings, though. We have our characters all go back for Miyu and Himekami. The doorway out of here closes and we're stuck here in hell, at least till we help the others. It was an unbeknownst amount of time, but both Miyu and Himekami have disappeared. We head only a bit of the way down before we see the two together. The Reformation system seems to have intended to restrain the two to prevent them going forward, and teleporting them back to a specific location. There we enter Palace X, the area of the prison ruler, an incredibly strange locale, I will have to add. The area the others comment has a heavy air, and Alice has a vision of them in the back, so the group begins to head into the area when we encounter much stronger enemies, most of which are capable of multi-hits and have very interesting gimmicks here. as well as pathways which, after crossing through a gate, appear out of nowhere. However, this exhibits the same problem as the teleportation layer, as none of the new, sudden appearances of the light floors appear on the map. The group reaches the second floor and we encounter a massive gate, which the two are supposedly behind. The gate has yet another condition, as anyone participating in the Reformation can't get past. As Sako points out, it's effectively a staff-only area. Shin points out, though, that knights technically aren't part of the system, so if you can find a way to make everyone a knight, then we could pass through. Well, turns out this layer holds a bunch of the experimental knight drugs, to which all the girls agree that they'll take these experimental drugs. To which I will say, of course, it works, but none of us know which stage these discarded, possibly expired drugs are at, and yet all of them take the drugs with zero hesitation. Throughout, you'll find the knight experimental drugs, and at any point throughout, you can teleport to the fourth layer and knight an individual so long as you have the drug, which at that point you can do the fourth wish as well. The girls will make some comments as you get the drugs, though none of that particularly matters. After getting all the drugs, knighting everyone, and opening the gate, the system doesn't like that the amount of knights has increased, so they go ahead and have us fight one more boss, though it's a reskin of one of the gang bosses from the Fire floor. By the end, everyone is shocked about the fact that security for the system is increasing, so we hurry up and move forward. In front of the two, we find the intelligence system, which seems to be in part of the head honcho of the Reformation program, who defends his system, citing the girls as evidence of its validity, before the girls inform it that they changed in spite of the system rather than because of it. We of course challenge it in a fight, which is shockingly easy. Saving the two, we rush over to Himekami and Miyu, breaking their bindings to the system. All of let out a sigh and relief, thinking now we can just walk out the door, and since the system's AI was limited by us, we can slip on through. It's not that easy. Though just before we leave, we meet Shaitan, who is the original program apparently for the Reformation program, or at least the one who was active during the first knighthood program. It apparently was a backup prototype measure, just in case something went wrong with the new system. Despite being the controller of effectively Hell, it has a surprisingly light personality, joking with everyone but attempting to leave it, pushes us back. The 7 other girls are fine to exit, but Miyu and Himekami, however, never left through the Reformation program. Or at the very least, Himekami hadn't finished the program. Shaitan also informs us that Miyu was originally a delinquent, however, that the Reformation program heads made an instructor, so Shaitan reverts her back to her original delinquent state. Think of it like a factory reset, I guess, in Hell. Deciding it'd be easier to just beat Shaitan in a fight rather than have the two go through the whole program, we attack it. But it pretty much revives instantly, and the moment we kill it. Because what we fought isn't Shaitan's real body, so let's make it easier, have 7 knights help out the 2 straggler delinquents, so the 2 join our party. There pretty much are levels in terms on, RPG leveling, but all the motivations they have are 0, so unlike the others, we have to access to all the motivations from the start. So you can just run through and go through those in any order you want, so long as you have the points. So, describing their playstyle, Himekami is a mix between a caster and a fighter, which, while basic, is fairly unique, as she's the only one who's kind of average on all ends, rather than being a pure fighter or pure mage to some extent. Miyu plays a support role, offering a great debuffer status, which is, again, unique considering no one else's playstyle is particularly centric around that debuff state. Knighting for the 2 is largely as expected, thankfully, and requires us having completed all motivations and all the wishes. For Himekami, she becomes a musketeer-like figure, which fits considering her usage of a rapier as a weapon, though throughout, and Miyu, using a whip, becomes a dominatrix. So going through them, it should be noted as well they don't have any individual endings to them, which is fairly sad, though there isn't a particular point in which either girl would be able to have their own ending, given what prompts the first individual endings were prompted by Himekami being beaten in the first place. So while we train these girls, there isn't anything in particular to do but level them up for a while. Well, That's what I thought, but apparently you don't need to knight them before advancing to the next area. Why did I not try getting to the next layer before advancing? No reason. But anyway, let's go over the girl's wishes right now. The theme of Himekami's wishes is reconciling with her past and her past time with her convict group. The first wish for Himekami is heading back to the cell blocks to see the first convict leader we fought. She apparently tried to convince her original group that violence wasn't the answer, only to learn it was in fact the answer. We assure her she was fine, but she apologizes regardless before we leave. The second, Himekami comes up to the Frost layer and confronts her past actions in causing others to fail, apologizing about her mistakes and how she hurt others. She notes that she wants to atone and regain her faith in others, becoming a better, or rather her own person again. The third, we see Himekami returning to the educational layer and decides that she wants to atone to Miyu now. So the two talk. Himekami makes a proper apology for not becoming a knight and having caused her problems. Miyu graciously accepts the apology but says she has nothing to apologize, at least to her, for. The two seem to begin talking and we step away, letting them have their reconciliation on their own terms. Himekami's first wish has us enter a room where she apologizes to us for when we ended up burning us back in purgatory when we absorbed the energy. We tell her it's fine, or rather, we're fine. She relays that she just wanted to destroy everything back then, and we tell her not to worry about it too much. She then realizes why the other girls like us for accepting attitude, and of course relates that everything feels right when she's with us. Miyu's theme is her effectively and finally teaching our character the history of the trials, which is, for the most part, pretty fascinating since now we're able to learn from an experienced instructor. First, we head down to the cells to learn about the scheduling of the delinquents, of which apparently they're supposed to have 4 hours of meditation, and more interesting, punishment and motivation is only supposed to be once a week occurrence. Also interestingly, I'm not sure if it's a mistranslation or they didn't care about it in the dialogue, but it is called punishment here for some reason. Also, Miyu slaps us again, even though we're technically her boss now. She then asks us if we want to take a look in the cell, and when we do, it somehow locks behind us because they are automatic for some reason. Miyu thinks she can open it with her keycard, only to realize that she doesn't have it, and so everyone searches for a keycard to let us out. So we're stuck in a cell for 6 hours, roughly. More interestingly, in Miyu's second, we learn about payment. That's right, we're actually getting paid, technically. Miyu then explains that since we're a brand new employee, we're apparently making $30 an hour, which is actually insane, apparently, with upwards mobility. Someone like Miyu was probably making $1,000 an hour, which, again, actually insane. We make a passing comment about our work clearly being undervalued before being slapped by Miyu, who relates that it's not necessarily about the money, but about the experiences, which, sure, but like, it's $1,000 an hour, potentially. That's huge. Now, another minor question is how are we depositing this money? Like, is it just in a bank, or we get it in a check in the mail? Does the Hellspire have like an official company on Earth that now has you on payroll? Anyhow, it's at least a fascinating idea and concept. The third, we see Purgatory. Miyu explains more about convicts, though mostly this is information we already did know. Convicts are sinners with no hope of redemption. The convicts we kill don't die, but lose their corporeal form before reforming somewhere else later. She assures that the system is now back in control of the convicts and won't ambush us anymore. While this is going on, we get ambushed by a convict, which we of course quickly deal with. After the fight, we try to make some remark about her, but she's kind of frustrated. In her last wish, we go into a room in the new area, and she discusses that she's kind of a little tired about putting on her bravado. She thanks us for helping Himekami and the other girls, and she disparages her work as an instructor wasn't the best at that time. But presumably, she's been here for a while, she's done good, she seemingly had at worst a handful of failed missions. She congratulates us on our success, and then Miyu begins to disparage herself again. She just wants to go home now, and then asks that we help her when she gets back into the real world. So with the end of that, we go into the next zone, the Garden of Memories. So for the most succinct description, this is just a dilapidated version of the education layer. For all intents and purposes, this is where we see the past of Miyu and Himekami in spite of the wish order I just established. Miyu is actually the first person. Miyu's first goes to approaches her with tickets for sale. She stays silent when we confront her on how she paid for those tickets, though. Eventually, due to pressing confrontation, we find out that after classes, she apparently used to go to concerts and arcades a lot by stealing her family's money. So she vows to change and, of course, not steal anymore. We fight her shadow self, with her coming out on top, once again vowing she'll change herself, this being the trigger that allows her to knight herself. Next, we deal with Himekami's sin, and the others are confronted initially because, of course, she wasn't brought to hell as a sinner, but for the knighthood program. However, it seems that the system has changed to at least consider some part of her life as a sin, and will then confront that. First set of ghost is Himekami's father, who our MC describes as Keiji, and well, it seems that her parents are getting a divorce. Both Himekami's mother and father are trying to negotiate with her to see which parent she wants to go home with. Then a girl asks for Himekami for her notes, and apparently the girl consistently does this, but never returns said notes, of which two friends, or supposedly Himekami's friends, are talking about. Himekami then records a series of voice logs in a voice recorder in which she begins to talk down on her friends and her father and family. Her primary sin seems to be judgment in the hopes of maintaining the perfect image, which makes it seem like that the heads of the trials maybe are only able to see surface level perceptions and the like. Anyway, she eventually accidentally plays the recording and is disturbed by how effectively ugly the girl in the recording sounds, and has a pseudo-mental breakdown about her not being perfect. The shadow self plays into this self-loathing and says she'll never be the perfect daughter that she thinks she needs to be. Going to find her item, we see her once again trying to be the perfect daughter, and her effective reaction to the other friend and the items itself is of course the recorder. Again, going over the drill, she realizes she doesn't need to be perfect and vows that she'll be less worried effectively about her perfection. Thus, she is able to be knighted. Now is the final confrontation with Shaitan. Ran calls out to it, open the gates, and Shaitan confirms that while the two have passed their trials, as was the deal, apparently the system has gone through a proper reboot, and Shaitan now sees the others as violating several rules, and it won't let us out. So it turns out we still need to fight Shaitan to escape, and our plan is simple: just defeat it and leave before it can regenerate. All the girls together do work together so we confront Shaitan, who's significantly stronger than he was before. The fight isn't too difficult as long as you know that the boss has a party wipe move that effectively, pretty much you need to use Ran's ultimate ability, which gives you an invincibility shield for 2 turns. So, whether you can do is use the ability, switch Ran out since she also has the party revive skill, and switch her in when Shaitan does the party wipe move, or starts charging it up at least. Finally, with the boss defeated, the gang tries to escape through the door, and while Shaitan revives before we can get through, Miyu and Himekami hold Shaitan back. The two try to do a heroic sacrifice, letting us all escape without the two, though the girls refuse to leave one another. They go to fight Shaitan once more, everyone then attacks at once, causing a bright white flash of light, and in that brief flash, we simply walk out of the door. Shaitan is furious, but we've effectively have everyone escape already. Everyone celebrates them together, and the girls we find are all together in school somehow. We see them at a school club discussing something related to a party, everyone also discussing a gift of who to give it to. Apparently, it's our birthday, and no one knows what to get us. They debate and decide that effectively want individual dates, which arguably can be recontextualized to the other endings. Eventually, we enter the room, and everyone has apparently decided an order, and we'll see them on Sunday. And the end. Except by the end of the game, we have a credit scroll, and it's now the 9th credit scroll I've viewed. At this point, all of the credits are unskippable in this game with slightly different music. So once again I viewed, it gets tedious, but wait, there's more. Entering the 4th floor of the other Garden of Memories, just before you get to the final boss, there's a sign with some garbled language, but within it is a code. Once the credits roll, and the game thanks you by inputting the code at the end, you get just one more chapter, which I'm not gonna lie, doesn't add anything substantial narratively for the game. You fight 4 fairly strong bosses before one last final boss, with all the girls claiming victory as well as celebrating the time they spent together, before we get one final pick of the girls in what seems like concept art from another later piece. But it's quite nice. And that's the end of Criminal Girls 1, which I thought was fairly good. The combat, as I've mentioned, was fair. The abilities we get as we go is pretty great. They do a lot of damage or have a bunch of utility, so it really felt worth getting the duo moves. The story, while admittedly not the most breathtaking of stories, but yeah, it's fine. I like some of the endings, and I thought the way that Himikami and the Frost Floor messed with the girls as well, and a lot of the girls' problems do feel particularly real and unnerving at times, especially as what I thought of Ran, and how messed up Sako's was. The music was pretty standard, it never stood particularly out, and it was serviceable again. Frostlayer, I think, had the best music and, theming. I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10 overall, though it feels a bit long at points and a little grindy in areas. I think I've given a fair assessment of my thoughts throughout the chapters, so let's move on to Criminal Girls 2. So what does the sequel bring to the table? Well, immediately is the updated art, which looks fantastic, especially in the replacement of the visual novel-esque hinges to more live 2D models throughout the game. A lot sharper images, and the art is just gorgeous, really. It's a stark upgrade from the first game, and well, a handful of things to emerge. I won't be rehashing too much, such as the basic info of what the game is, but I'll be hashing some of the new stuff, obviously. So we have our new cast, which for all intents and purposes is the 7 joined together at once. There's a fight between 4 and 7 delinquents, and typical shenanigans. Our cast feels much more personality diverse from the get-go, so we have Shinoa Akizuki. She's a pretty rational girl on first impression, a pretty much Ran-type character without her misandrous start. Lily Arisugawa, a very eccentric rich girl who has a lot of bark and a rather tepid bite. Yurine, a pretty ditzy girl who seems to have a malleable personality, trying not to be too much of a nuisance to others. Kuroe Issei, a girl who has a timid as a mouse personality, she barely speaks, and uses a blue stuffed donkey named Baron to act out things that she herself is too timid to say. Tsukasa, a Gyaru-type girl who has a loose personality, and she's apparently bisexual and likes to fluster people with her feminine wiles, per se, as well as apparently having no interest in actually being reformed. She'll regularly try to coerce our character into shenanigans with her. Sue Shihara is Alice, if your logic was just purely rational rather than ESP related. That Alice, at least upon initial meeting, is pretty flat, her just wanting to effectively escape. And finally, Mizuki, her personality is excitable child who doesn't trust strangers she just met, which is very uncomfortable to say the least given what's going throughout the story. Our story begins with our character waking up in a cell block with another instructor or assistant, or rather a voice in the sky named Toko over a radio or intercom informing us of our current plight. We lost our memories entirely, so it's possible we're not a newbie to being an instructor, but for all intents and purposes of the story, at least thinks we are. But surprisingly, our character actually does has a past. Our prior character is now devoid of personality and of a name, isn't much of a character as he has an avatar for you, and while there are elements in its sequel, we have actual dialogue and backstory, which again we'll touch throughout the game. We're instructed to head out and see what's going on, and of course we need a party to actually serve out there. We meet our 7 prisoners of the game, like I said, Shinoa, Tsukasa, Lily, Kuroe, Yurine, Mizuki, and Sui. We're rejected by most outright by some of them, but there's a basic order of recruitment starting with Shinoa, Sui, Lily, and Yuri. The others opt to stay behind for the time being, deciding that since we have no memories, we're not really a great instructor. One thing that becomes clear as we go to leave is the rivalry set up between Shinoa and Lily, which, well, will be prevalent throughout the entire game. As we head to the next floor, Toko informs us about motivation system, and gives us our first motivation tool, which is a push brew, or at least that's, I think, the art of it. I think it's just supposed to represent a coarse-haired brush, which it dubs Scrubby Scrub. Surprisingly, the art, at least from initial observation, doesn't change much in terms of lewdness, so not a noticeable hike up of clothing. Instead, you get the camera to pan far more in what is already, well, more explicit framing. but then again, it was not released on Steam, and even so, I don't think it would change that much. So the game also has a rather annoying feature of using a horizontal framing for higher level motivations, which wouldn't be so bad if I were playing this on the actual Vita, since I'm using the emulator. Turning my monitor vertically for what would be approximately 30 seconds of a quote-unquote titillation would be something I wouldn't do. But it would definitely fine on the portable console. Now, as I mentioned, this game does away with a lot of the pretense of the first one, which kind of hints at more illicit nature. This one straight up tells you, in fact, as soon as Toko informs us of the motivation system, Shinoa straight up says that motivation is S&M, and a lot of my this is weird but isn't like a complete kink thing for the character. But yeah, that illusion drops pretty much immediately, and made some of the retrospect aspect of looking at the first game much more weird. Motive is kind of gone. Yurine calls it a perverted joke, and Shinoa tries to look for an explanation, but we really don't get any justification as to why this is how we motivate using it. But that's just what we do. You signed up for it when you bought the game. So a little further explanation of the combat and why they bring up S&M is the S&M feature within this. During motivations, when you level up, you have a choice of a Seido or Maso ability. Seido typically are much more aggressive and defensive abilities, while Maso is much more defensive and healing orientated. So this has a slightly less useful ability also, which is coaching. I pretty much never used it. Effectively, you'll enhance a girl through the coach system, and if they lean Seido, they will boost attack stats, and if they're leaning Maso, you'll improve defensive stats. I'd use it occasionally, but never felt it especially helpful, so we motivate one of the girls and encroach on a door, though we're unable to open said door at the first level. Lily attempts to open said door. Shinoa and her argue about how to open it, admittedly not about the doors, but of Shinoa offering a possible solution, which they deem wrong. Toko comes over the comms and informs us that there should be a switch nearby. It opens the door, and heading through, we eventually find a convict. Now, notably, when we first bring on Lily, she scoffs at the idea of her being in hell. When we encounter our first convict and Yurine reminds the girl, she realizes that we're actually in hell. Regardless, we have to fight the convict, which Toko helps to inform us how, and we encourage the girls to fight in this place. After defeating what is a maggot, Lily comes to the conclusion that convicts can appear anywhere, and because of some malfunctions with the system, Toko agrees, so Lily immediately recognizes that we need to help the other girls we left behind. We head on back and we see Tsukasa defending the two girls as a convict approaches. The OG party of 4 shows up and we fight the convict in front of us. The 3 are surprised we came back to save them, and we kinda explain the situation. Tsukasa won't leave Kuroe and Mizuki behind though, and so Lily ends up convincing the 2 to join us, but reluctantly, and not to fight but for their own safety. Sue then wonders whether accepting 3 new party members who are in the eyes of her dead weight, or at least Kuroe and Mizuki are, due to the fact that they opt not to help us in fights, whether it's a good idea considering we're working to bring the other girls out of hell, and we should be more so focused on that. We of course accept them as they are, and while we don't directly voice them, Sue can read our face. The party continues onward, knowing now that the system isn't working as it was initially intended, and will need to stick together to survive. Encountering another convict, Yurine is noticeably afraid to fight before Sue rationalizes the convicts as empty husk. Eventually approaching a new area, Tsukasa calls us effectively a pervert, and Kuroe and Mizuki both agree with her, though we did nothing apparently. We continue to encounter more convicts before Sue grows annoyed by Kuroe not participating in combat, and offers to teach her the fundamentals for combat. Eventually, we all reach an area that the group is tired and exhausted, so they all get a rest, and we get introduced into what I think is probably one of the better set pieces in the game, which they'll completely drop later in the game, is the camp talks. Effectively, the party hangs out in an area and we're allowed to just talk. They give various insights into their own thoughts, and I really enjoyed this since it was much more of a individualistic approach to them. But they, stop doing this halfway through the game, and it's a little disappointing at that point. There's no particular order, I'll just be going in whatever order of what I talk to them. So Mizuki we approach and she thinks she's in the way and is worried she'll get abandoned. We tell her she's fine, which she notes Lily and us are being way too nice to her, which is concerned that we're manipulating her in some way. Approaching Kuroi, she immediately uses Baron to talk to us, though Baron relays that her master is afraid and worries, and we agree that we're afraid, that we've also been thrown to the fire. We then pat Kuroi's head, telling her not to worry. Shinoa puts on a face, but she seems to be vaguely annoyed that we're not working together as well as we could. She then tells us that Lily reminds her of a friend and is worried that Lily is going to somehow fall behind. She also notes that the girls don't quite trust us as a leader. Sue is kinda standoffish still. She doesn't understand who they chose as a delinquent, because in this game we're sent to hell pre-crime style, which is a weird distinction now. It's later more concretely defined that life choices they make will lead them down a wrong path, but I honestly think that the theming of the game is much worse as a result of considering that pre-hell sentencing is pretty weak as a concept, especially given what we're learning later down the line. Sue continues, though, and questions our aptitude as an instructor. Tsukasa says that she's wouldn't mind taking over as instructor and handling motivations, which is where we learn Tsukasa is bisexual. She then also notes it's weird being sent to hell before actually committing a crime. Yurine simply wants praise and presses herself on us, and that's about it, really. Lily thinks that this is all some elaborate setup by her mother before we tell her it's real, and she accepts the truth that she's in hell, finally. She also notes that Shinoa seems to be more of an instructor than us at this point. Concluding the camp meeting, Lily goes to tie Mizuki's shoe, noting that she seems unmotivated, and under her breath, Mizuki calls herself useless. Tsukasa seems to grope Yurine, though I'm unsure. Sui and Kure note that the group is kinda energetic and a tad annoying. We continue on and find ourselves another overworld convict who's blocking our path forward, Lily wanting to just take it out and be on our way. Shinoa points out this is probably a trap, but while I get the sentiment when another convict appears behind us, I'd like to point out we were caught in the trap for them on the onset of our arrival. It doesn't really matter whether or not we were going to attack the one in front of us now or later. Anyway, we're surrounded on both sides, and the girls panic. Considering that both Mizuki and Kuroi don't want to fight, we have to convince them to join in combat to protect ourselves. The two initially reject the idea, but we encourage them that they can do it and help everyone. Mizuki's initial response being, of course, about her being useless. This also unlocks the coaching system, which I had briefly mentioned earlier. Following the battle, the group praises the two for helping out. Sue, however, still seems a little upset that they had to be in mortal danger for the two to help. Continuing, we find another giant door, which Lily tries to push open, setting off an alarm which causes an announcement, in which it mentions that a convict is in the area dubbed the Girls' Garden, and that the Reformation system is currently rebooting. Lily is blamed for causing the alarm, to which she responds defensively. This is basically where we learn what wrong in hell this time is. Convicts have apparently invaded the system, and a war is kinda going on to get them under control. Lily, hearing this, is freaking out because if the system is down, how does everyone get back home? And so she attacks the door. This causes a second alarm, which a boss convict dubbed the Hellguard shows up to fight. Notably, Yurine says she would fight, but her stomach hurts, though Tsukasa tells her to knock it off, and we go back to fight. The guard beats me, so I do a bit of low-level grinding to unlock some new abilities. After the fight, we unlock the spanking motivation. Exciting. Mizuki then approaches Lily, realizing that the security wouldn't fight delinquents, but would fight a convict. Mizuki proposes the concept that a convict is probably amongst the group. Sue, realizing that a particularly smart convict could hide amongst a group of delinquents to escape, is a real threat now. Everyone now is beginning to wonder who among them is a delinquent. Would be, and Tsukasa is kind of blamed, doesn't help by stoking the fires of mistrust amongst us. Toko then comes over the comms, and we of course learn that she's dealing with the convicts that are destroying the system now. Apparently the system manager, of which if I had to guess was a fully developed Shaitan or Shaitan's successor, was killed. Toko then realizes that she has no idea how he died, so the question remains on how to proceed. Especially with the system down, no one can reform, and we can't go home. Everyone then decides we have to move forward regardless of if one of us is a convict, though again, Tsukasa fans the flames of mistrust. Suddenly, we meet a strange instructor who approaches us, apparently showing up in response to the second wall alarm. Her name is Maya, and apparently she's looking to round up convicts. Shinoa asks for help while Lily demands assistance. Maya, however, ignores the two and notes that we're only supposed to have 6 delinquents to reform, and as I mentioned at the beginning, we have 7 girls to reform at this point, so the question of whether someone is a convict or not becomes more prevalent. Maya, as a result of this possible convict situation, opts to send us deeper into hell. All of us. In hopes, of course, keeping the convict from going any further. So Maya teleports the 8 of us to a new layer of hell dubbed the Maze Hell. Everyone wakes up, and man, the art and environments in this game are a step up. Love the way Maze Hell looks. Anyway, the girls are confused about waking up, to which Lily yells for the convict to reveal themselves since, because of them, all of 8 of us were condemned. Everyone argues for a bit before we refocus on what to do. Toko comes over the intercoms again, and we tell her about Maya and the situation we underwent. Toko suggests that maybe there isn't a convict amongst us, since the files could have been corrupted as part of the convict's invasion of the system. She also informs us of a way back to the Hellspire via a secret, room. And we're also able to interview her about the maze a bit. So, Maze Hell apparently is where delinquents are sent after they fail their reformation program, and instructors aren't meant to ever see there. There are butterflies, which we'll see around the area, which apparently are delinquents who've transformed and are unable to forget their sin, and if we touch them, we'll lose our mind. We're told, of course, it's dangerous, but Toko lets us know about the Grim Reaper, an executioner who makes sure hell isn't overpopulated with convicts. Fighting it is apparently a death wish, as one would expect. That being said, we begin our exploration of Maze Hell, the lingering question of who is a convict in everyone's mind, and the fact that if we're not careful, they might turn into butterflies. Though we take another break to talk to everyone. Kuroi attempts to psych herself up, but seems overall scared. Yurine apparently accuses Kuroi, but it's actually accusing Baron as a convict, along with Lily's brooch, suggesting that the convict might have transformed into an object. We kinda disregard Yurine's suggestion. Mizuki is upset that Lily is upset at her, and is afraid of being abandoned again, though we reassure her that's not going to happen. She also suggests we might be a convict due to our amnesia, which isn't actually a bad idea. Lily is annoyed that we aren't pressing the issue further, and we end up apologizing, though Lily doesn't like the dour look on our face and encourages us, which, when we thank her, she acts like a tsundere. Shinoa is annoyed about how this all happened and is trying to resolve the situation, but can't really find a way. Sue is annoyed at Maya sending us all to hell, and we discuss that it's very annoying in general, with Sue vowing she'll make it out of hell. Tsukasa is ambivalent to the situation, but notes that since we defended the girls, that's why we were sent down here. She jokingly calls us the convict, and notes we need to gain more trust from everyone. After the party regroups, Shinoa and Lily argue about a potential convict and everyone drops it, continuing on. We however stop because it's clearly bothering the group, and everyone hash it out. While we're talking, Mizuki goes to touch some flowers before she freaks out. The flower apparently has a butterfly tears on it, which aren't as potent seemingly as touching a butterfly directly, but still has some of the effects of messing with your head. We're then ambushed by 3 convicts, but immediately those convicts are killed by the man himself, the Grim Reaper. Everyone is justifiably terrified, and we have to fight it. We're obviously not winning this thing, it is, and slight spoiler again, an endgame boss. However, after we lose it, it just disappears, though no one is unsure of how we actually survived. Apparently, Lily, Yurine, Mizuki, and Kuroi hid behind us in fear. Everyone opts to count our blessings and press forward, to which we then meet a girl in the other room. She has 2 pigtails and bright red hair, and she's dressed like a delinquent. And while we confront her, all the girls hide behind us. Come to find out, her name is Enri, and she likes to watch humans come to the conclusion that she either failed reformation or is a convict herself. Enri comes to mock us before teleporting away. While brief, it doesn't dissuade us from moving further in Maze Hell, as we explore a fog emerges, and there's suddenly 2 Yurines. Everyone is absolutely confused by the new Yurine, though one dashes out and attacks Tsukasa, who, when the real Yurine goes to apologize, Tsukasa is hesitant because she could be the convict and can kinda duplicate as the theory. This turns everyone for the most part against Yurine, with the exception of us, of course. There's some laughter before Enri shows up, and implies that this is Enri's doing, but she laughs because everyone is just playing the blame game now. Now, with someone being attacked, Mizuki and Sui hash it out, with Sui asking for the most rational explanation on who would be the convict, that being the person who keeps bringing up the convicts and slowing everyone down, that being Mizuki in her eyes, since she effectively stalls the group up. Lily steps up to defend Mizuki's honor, which Sui points out is strange as since she's only willing to protect Mizuki, but blame everyone else. Shinoa then steps up saying we're playing into Enri's hand, and Sui kinda calls Mizuki useless in a roundabout sort of way. We try to tell them that we can act as arbitrator, but no one seems happy with us doing that. So everyone holds on and we press on, forward into some more fog. The second Yurine shows up once again, and the two doing the whole stop copying me shtick. Tsukasa then suggests that she could just beat up both of them. Shinoa obviously notes that senselessly beating Yurine isn't a good solution. Tsukasa shirks that away, but before anyone can act, the fake tries to attack Tsukasa again. This time, we push her out of the way and we are injured in the process. Everyone seems worried as we're bleeding from what I assume is a stab wound. Everyone argues that what could have been done, but Tsukasa yells and interrupts. She argues we shouldn't of course be fighting, as that doesn't help the situation at all. It cuts and Tsukasa helps bandage the wound, and she seems a little annoyed at us for putting our life in danger, saying that if we help again, she'll kill us twice, but tone-wise though, it's obvious that she's just trying to downplay the action. Continuing, we find another fog and confront the two Yurines. Tsukasa talks down the other two, and the two Yurines try to defend themselves, one saying they're nervous and try to rationalize what's going on, where the other basically accepts their fate. Tsukasa makes her decision and punches the one who accepted her fate, as that was the manly or brave response in her eyes. Tsukasa is right, and she makes a statement that she was just paying us back. She just here to enjoy the ride, really. The next floor, we open a new area and get a door closed behind us with an army of convicts in front of us. It's actually a pretty easy fight in spite of just how many it tries to portray us getting overwhelmed. But nothing happens after we beat them though. I suppose it's just to illustrate the group is getting stronger, really. Eventually, we decide to take a break as our wound is apparently opening up again. Tsukasa treats us, and we learn Tsukasa seems to enjoy medicine in school. We also see Lily apologize for her earlier behavior and learn about her family motto, respect begets humanity. Deciding we need another longer break, we set up camp. Approaching Shinoa, we apologize for her having to be a leader, or pseudo-leader at least to everyone, though she tells us that's fairly normal outside of Hell. She was a leader in her school and a bit insightful into her personality as she's using to mediate things, though she notes she saw the bad parts of people and enjoyed the gossip that the position provided. Yurine hugs us. The other girls still don't seem to absolutely trust her, but we tell her it'll only take some time before they accept her again. Approaching Tsukasa, she notes that we should be resting. We tell her it's not that painful, and she suggests that if we're not too badly hurt, she can help get our blood flowing. We turn her down and she wonders why we helped her given her troublemaker behavior, then suggests next time she's not worth saving. Kure is still a nervous wreck, and we offer her the opportunity to conversate with us. The first thing she asks though is, how does it feel when blood drips down? We try to downplay this as when we got hurt, but she retreats into using Baron once again. We tell her in a more eloquent way that we felt powerless and sinking. We then ask her why she would ask something like that, but she brushes it off saying that it's not important. We then decide we'll talk directly to her and ask her about her family. She says she's a genius well known in her town with a phenomenal memory, even making it on the news. We tell her that's impressive, only for her to say that her parents said something similar, but she doesn't understand what they mean. Sue dismisses us for being brazen again, protecting Tsukasa, noting that if anything happens to us, the reformation becomes more difficult. She looks over our wounds, noting that she was a weak child who was in the hospital a lot, noting her skinny frame, which she isn't quite proud of, and is the start of her opening up about her body image problems. Mizuki questions who we were outside of the Reformation program, and turns out we have a flashback where we hear our supposed little sister wanting our mom and dad back. Returning to Mizuki in the present, we tell her what we saw, I think, and it leaves us sad. Mizuki tells us about her family as well, but she notes that they're gone now too, with us wishing for her to be reunited with her family as well. Finally, we approach Lily, and she tries to take responsibility in part for our woes, though she tries to refute, and that she actually cares about us. She apparently also wants to talk to everyone, but is under the impression that people should approach her, calling everyone else commoners. Regrouping, Enri joins us, her thinking that the urine thing would have caused us to fall apart by now. Now, Lily accuses Enri of doing the urine shenanigans, and Enri doesn't deny it, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't her either. Enri then calls humans ugly, saying that she loves them before saying that she doubts we'll make it out of the forest. Then she disappears. Eventually, as we continue, we find a bloodied uniform, and everyone is a little worried about it. Shinoa eventually concludes that it's probably someone messing with us, and I agree, but even then, we know this is where delinquents are. But when they fail, which the fact that they're only one uniform should be comforting to us. We enter into a new area, and as we explore, we begin teleporting in effective circles. Shinoa and Lily argue a bit, Lily talking about a little too seriously apparently scaring Kuroi. Tsukasa tries to make a snide remark about the girls sucking up to us when we try to calm the argument, only to have Shinoa say that basically the real suck-up was the one who tended our wounds. As we continue to walk, it becomes clear that we're making no progress. Arguments continue as everyone argues about how to progress, Lily asserting that she somehow understands the process. Another loop, and we're still stuck. Lily realizes she doesn't know what she's talking about, and doesn't have it figured out. Kuroi, tired of walking along with everyone else, lets out a line which I guess I didn't realize was significant. "I finally died. I thought my troubles were over," she says, before asking to be left behind. We offer to carry her, though she refuses. Sue chimes in, saying that she should treat her life so lightly, saying she should effectively be mad at Maya and Enri, that proving them wrong should be their goal now. To which Kuroi seems to tacitly accept this. Kuroi then immediately notices a box, which Tsukasa had actually kicked earlier, noticing that the box hasn't moved. So, the group searches around the box looking for clues. Tsukasa finds it, and a new passageway opens up, allowing us to escape from this loop. Everyone, thankful to Kuroi, and likely Tsukasa for their help, reaches a new floor. Exhausted from the loop, we take another rest, the group breaking up, and we get another talk. Yurine tries to tell us something and notices a look on her face, as we tell her that her info isn't really the best. We tell her it's about the convict to put it on hold, considering we're not in the best spot as a group to keep throwing around accusations. She jokingly says that not asking about the convict is somehow something the convict would do, semi-suggesting we are again the convict. That seems to strike a nerve with us, though. We are still kind of in our feels about that, though feeling ourselves judged by the girls for not being a good instructor, it seems. Yurine relates that after the clone incident, the girls also don't trust her, then suggesting that we're not really sure about the differences between convicts and delinquents. We approach Kuroi, who we say it seems like she's doing better, but Kuroi flats out tells us that she's not doing better. We assure her she is. Kuroi, though, Baron wonders why we're treating her so well, as though we have an alternative motive, but we just tell her that we want to get to know her better because we care about the group, which of course she's a part of. We ask, for example, what her days were like, and she only repeats the word study over and over again, and thoughtlessly we seem to say that she must be a hard worker, then before head pats again, which Kuroi seems to be warming up to. Suka offers up to take the motivations again, and while we tell her we're okay, she's kinda surprised that we have a backbone, and tells us to live a little, saying that her philosophy even offering us private lessons in the Tsukasa lifestyle. She sighs when we turn her down before telling us we're kinda special, helping us selflessly before warning us that that's going to get us hurt, saying we shouldn't live our life that way. Mizuki is still calling herself useless and is worried we're still gonna leave her behind, now deflated compared to her earlier attitude. She seems surprised though that we don't leave her behind and trying to be useful. After telling her we're a bit tired, she massages our shoulders, saying that it's something that she used to do with her mother. She then notes that she's basically got all the standard skills of a housewife because her grandmother taught her, and suggests that she'll help with whatever she can. We approach Shinoa, who has a look on her face, seemingly annoyed that the others aren't more cooperative with her instructions. Her attitude towards Lily comes up and we try to relay that Lily might be behaving in a certain way, but she doesn't understand the perspective she's coming from, seemingly suggesting that what they need is a leader that's not us. So we suggest that we pick a leader again, but Shanoa is worried that the convict might be elected and turns the idea down. Lily is also talking about Shanoa and notices that Shanoa might be trying to rally support behind her, trying to figure out what she's plotting. We comment that maybe stalking Shanoa isn't a smart idea and might be creepy, which she doesn't like. She suggests that we look a little deeper into the facades of the other girls, not trusting their surface-level actions as they are. We then approach Sue, who calls us a middleman, and while we think she's yanking our chain, she actually means it as a compliment. She also notes it's interesting that the other instructors aren't looking for us, but is thankful that we're still here for the group. We take the responsibility for the girls, and she thinks we're acting tough, but again suggests it's a good thing, ending it with her saying that even though she can't speak for the convict, but that even if they won't admit it, all the girls are rooting for our success. She then tells us that she doesn't trust the Reformation system, and that she doesn't intend to take the route that Hell has. Continuing, we encounter the Cursant, a boss convict which everyone is worried about fighting, which it claims at least that they eat newcomers for fertilizer or sustenance, I'm not sure which. The girls are nervous, but I'm not gonna lie, I don't get why it's scary to them. Maybe it's a size isn't reflected in the art, but it doesn't seem any worse than anything else we fought before. It does beat me, though, the first time, and this is probably where I noticed the biggest difference, at least somewhat, between the first and sequel game, is the fact that bosses are kind of stupid. So you'll clear out enemies, normal enemies that is, pretty well throughout the game fairly easily. You'll feel as though level-wise you're competent in the respective trial, and you're not though. Noticeably, the bosses either just have crazy damage output, or a bad mechanic, in my opinion, that makes it not necessarily difficult in terms of DPS, but will outright ruin any opportunity you have to do something significant throughout the fight. It doesn't help that the combo attacks in this game are kind of pitiful compared to the first game, and rarely seem worth it against bosses, and are best used if they have multi-target type attacks when farming. I'm also not gonna lie, 2 or 3 of the characters carry late game, and everyone else stops mattering. Eventually, after a bit of grinding for the boss, we beat Cursant, and got our new slime motivation. Enri then shows up and congratulates us, though in a taunting way. Lily jumps at her, seeing an opportunity to strike, though Enri suggests that Lily broke someone, causing Enri to stop in her tracks. Then she talks to Kuroi, saying how she's not nearly as bad, then alludes to all the other girls and their sins. We argue that the girls are going to reform, though Enri makes fun of us for losing our memory, as if amnesia is our fault. Everyone now on edge anticipates seeing her again before we move on to the next layer. The second layer is the hot layer, and everyone is, just like the first game, feeling the heat. Toko calls us, and, well, seems the upper management was attacked by convicts. Some fatalities, though, while some were killed, Toko's experience saved her. She lets us know that this is the Hellfire floor, which apparently burns souls, though apparently also seems to fuse them together somehow. She wishes us luck before she cuts off communication. The floor is pretty uneventful till we encounter a button, and everyone is tired deciding whether or not to make camp, as well as debate how the button closes. Well, pressing the button closes the door behind us, and then lo and behold, the Grim Reaper shows up. Everyone panics, but a convict shows up drawing its attention away, and we flee. So we flee, and the heat is exhausting Kuroi, clearly struggling, repeating one of her mantras. The group is again at each other's throats, but Sue apparently has a plan to get away from the Grim Reaper, which is basically just trap it in a room, and we help Kuroi, asking her to push herself just a little longer. Well, the plan is simple. There's 2 buttons in the area that can seal the Grim Reaper in said room, so our goal is, trapping it. Everyone debates, though, as some people need to serve as bait to lure the Grim Reaper in the room, in which we see Mizuki volunteer first, only to immediately be shot down by Lily. Mizuki claims to be the fastest of the group, but Lily won't let her put her life on the line. So instead, we volunteer that we'll all act as bait, and Mizuki can press the button, which, considering convicts can show up anywhere, sending her on her own isn't much safer, but sure. The solution seems amicable for everyone, though, and the plan goes into action. The group then taunts the Grim Reaper, drawing its attention, and while Mizuki presses the button, she makes a mistake, trapping us in there for a second as well, before correcting her mistake, allowing us to escape and trap the Grim Reaper inside. Everyone is pumped on adrenaline and nerves, and Mizuki shows up, tears in her eyes, thinking she failed. Lily comforts her, however, and telling her everyone to cheer her on, though Tsukasa says something that kinda makes Yurine take back her compliment. Mizuki is of course hurt. Mizuki now feels as though everyone is disappointed in her, only for Sue to say that she fixed her mistake, and that's something to be proud of, which seems to cheer her up somewhat. The group then decides it's best not to stick around, considering we aren't sure if the Grim Reaper is capable of breaking through walls. Continuing, we encounter Enri, or at least her voice over the system, as she's apparently sitting elsewhere drinking juice in an air-conditioned room. She tries to taunt the group comfortably, though everyone fights back with comparing it to a sauna, only for Enri to lock us in the room and send convicts to fight us. The group of course fights and is surprisingly coordinated as a team, eventually winning the convicts down. Shinoa taking charge of half of the group, Tsukasa tries to downplay Shinoa's help, leading only to have Lily actually come to her defense, and to my and Shinoa's surprise. Everyone leaves, but Shinoa stays behind for a second. We call out and around to get her. We see her going into a tirade about her annoyances with Tsukasa. We then call out again, and she's surprised to hear that we were listening in, and doesn't like that we saw that side of her. She admits she goes off on everyone out of earshot, and asks us to not tell anyone. We ask her if she really wants to bottle up her emotions like that, and she emphatically says yes, because she doesn't want to lose everyone's trust, and thinks that if she gains everyone's trust, it'll help her reform in some way. Further up now, definitely free from the possible terror of the Grim Reaper, we take another break. Approaching Yuri, she isn't sure why she's in hell, claiming that she was just an ordinary student, and then takes the maybe it's all a dream, saying that this is the fire level of a video game, which don't know where she got that idea from. So being the kind of instructor we are, we pinch her cheek, and the feeling of pain of getting her cheek pinched, she realized that is in fact in hell. Which I'm not sure why she didn't get this feeling whenever convicts hit her, but sure. We then tell her that she needs to work together with everyone, but she counteracts that working hard is pointless, only to correct herself saying that she'll work harder, her mask slipping somewhat. Kuroe we apologize to for pushing her, and then tell her that it will be better next time, only for her to claim that she can't be like Shinoa or Mizuki, with us telling her otherwise. She then repeats that maybe she can. She questions everyone's reason to escape, and maybe that no one can, though, as usual, we tell her everyone's trying their best to escape. We ask her about her reason, and she's not sure whether or not she has a reason as outside of her. She did nothing but study. We ask her if she even likes studying, and she doesn't affirm it. Kuroe claims she's a genius according to her parents, and that's just about it. Tsukasa we thank for taking care of Kuroe, and doesn't accept the compliment, saying that otherwise we would have taken the risk on our own. He's annoyed that we aren't more concerned about our own safety, noting that everyone's much more fragile and not wanting anyone to blame her for getting hurt, claiming she did it to protect herself. Still, we thank her, and she's still somewhat annoyed. We then head over to Mizuki, who still seems kinda depressed, especially after the Grim Reaper incident, and she notices that everyone else gave her weird looks, jealous of the respect that Shinoa gets. She then feels like she's at her grandmother's house, claiming her grandma was strict, making her learn new things that she hated doing, and we say it's rough that she had to do that when she visited. She's confused that we think she visited her grandmother, and it's revealed she lived with her. We try to pry further, but Mizuki doesn't take that well, her freaking out that we're trying to learn more about her. We approach Lily, who's worried about Mizuki, and rightly thinks she's in her head about the Grim Reaper incident. It's nice, so we thank her for her caring for Mizuki, and Kuroe, her claiming she cares for everyone equally and clearly gets flustered with us. She says it's only natural as well that she cares about Mizuki, since she reminds her of her little sister, giving her off this protective instinct. At the mention of sister, though, we have a flashback with our little sister who says she loves us, and that if we leave her, she'd die, and begs us not to shut her out, revealing that that first memory was initially about her sister, which we speculated on. Approaching Shinoa, she's confused about the comments on her leadership, and wondering why people claimed something was wrong. She thinks she did a great job, and we agree, but that it's something the other girls aren't used to seeing. She's now a little angry at us for the slight criticism, claiming she's trying to maintain her image in the group. We then learn that she struggled maintaining friends outside of here, with them speaking out of line, or at least out of line for her. She does miss them, however, apparently. Reconvening, someone's missing. Mizuki seems to have wandered off on her own, and Lily is incredibly worried about her at bat for everyone searching, as she saved us from the Grim Reaper, so we launch a search party. We find her a ways off, though she screams and runs away again, everyone unsure of why. Approaching her again, we confront her about why she ran away, an accusation being thrown about her being the convict before Lily calls out to her, as she runs away again, that trust will be broken if she doesn't talk. Confronted, she confesses that she was trying to be useful and so was running ahead in hopes of not being abandoned for being useless, before we of course let her know we wouldn't abandon her, before she then hands us a flame key she found, allowing us to progress further into the dungeon. We go through the door and we're still in the flame layer and everyone is again just tired of being here. Lily pipes up thinking we've forgotten something, but it's her excuse to ask for another rest, which we have a camp out again. The rests are becoming a little too frequent, I feel, at this point. They're nice, I do like them, but it is a little overwhelming just how frequently they're happening within this first half, and then how they're going to stop happening in the latter half of the game. We talk to Tsukasa first, who seems more concerned about us talking with the others, noticing that everyone is now really suspicious about the convict, thinking everyone is feigning innocence. We note it doesn't matter, we're going to help everyone regardless, and Tsukasa notes that that's the expected answer. Lily is kinda embarrassed about being the one who asked for the break, thinking it's a sign of weakness, and doesn't want the others to doubt her. She basically talks about not trusting Shinoa. Sue is weirded out that everyone's getting along, saying she's worried about the suspicions going along, especially with the convict rumors, but thinks they're harmless at the moment and we need to act rationally, seeing as we only have one shot at reformation. Kuroi is worried about Mizuki, thinking something might have happened if she disappears and wants to work just as hard as Mizuki going forward. We tell her she's helping, and then notice something in her hair, and she abruptly calls us brother, which triggers a flashback, in which our sister and us got into a fight and apparently haven't made up. Kuroi apologizes, but we tell her it's alright. Yurine has yet another guess of the convict's real identity, thinking it might be Tsukasa and Lily, but is apparently only making guesses so she doesn't get double-crossed. We confront her on doing what everyone else is doing, as everyone looks up to her, as she and Tsukasa are like older sisters to the group, to which Yurine asks that we don't ask too much of her, as we don't know who she is. After talking with the group, we pan over to Shinoa and Mizuki talking, Shinoa asking why Lily is so attached to her. Shinoa informs Mizuki about Lily's older sister. After talking with the group, we pan over to Shinoa and Mizuki talking. Shinoa asks why Lily is so attached to her. Shinoa informs Mizuki about Lily's younger sister, and kinda coaxes Mizuki to act like Lily's younger sister for the time being. Approaching the two after the information, they don't inform us of what they were talking about, and play coy to it. Shinoa's kind of deception. Reflecting on the conversation, we realize we need to unite everyone better, triggering another flashback in which our sister was hurt and is in the hospital. She's in critical condition and not lasting long. She seemingly dies after an accident of some sort. This dream also confirms our parents are dead. We're further determined to help the others, seemingly because our sister would have wanted us to do so. Advancing, we encounter the boss of the floor, Punisher, who supposedly wants us to tell her truths and it'll let us pass through. Sue concludes it's a trap and we need to actually defeat it. And defeating it, Lily tries to go forward before Shinoa comments that Enri might show up ahead. Well, no, she teleports behind us actually. Lily goes to strike her, but I think she dodges before making fun of our teamwork, and that will all end up alone. To sow discord, she begins throwing out the accusations everyone has made about each other, before we tell all of them to calm down, somehow managing to keep everyone from choking each other out. Enri laughs again before disappearing, ending our third floor, or second in terms of ascent at least. Next up is Bloody Hell, which is sickeningly sweet. Upon entry, we get another call from Toko, who's still hostage to the convicts. We tell her what's going on, and turns out we entered the secret emergency path. She informs us that there will be traps, but is cut off before she can describe any of them. Lily asks about us calling Toko back, but actually, competently, our character notes that if the convicts find the radio from us calling her, they'll likely destroy it. There's a back and forth of whether we wait for Toko to contact us again, which is split down the middle, pretty much. We decide to press forward and carefully continue in hopes as well that the Grim Reaper doesn't from behind come and kill us. We get to a new rest spot, only to have Enri wake us up, her apparently having watched us asleep. Well, turns out she separated the group into about half, 4 on one side, 3 on the other, technically 4 on both since the MC is on the 3 side, but we can't fight, so it's 4 and 3 really in terms of combat. So now we've got 2 paths to go down, as 2 separate paths to clarify. Yurine, Kuroi, Shinoa, and our MC are on one side, while Lily, Mizuki, Tsukasa, and Sue are on the other side. So when the others wake up, apparently Enri drew on Lily's face, but seems to have actually protected everyone while they were sleeping. They come to the same conclusion to move forward, though, which leads both parties into parallel rooms where we encounter the first trap, a set of 2 buttons which unlocks the doors on the MC's side. One of the buttons releases a toxic gas at the MC's side, while the other will just open the door. Tsukasa annoyingly decides just to press the button on the right, taking the 50-50 chance, which is going to be real annoying later, I will say. Turns out, it released the toxic gas, and everyone is forced to hold their breath so they don't get sick. The MC's party is now angry at the others, especially as Kuroi seems to have been more ill than the others, her vomiting in a corner and her having another kind of breakdown. Enri mocks us that we got it wrong and point out that Tsukasa is the one who pressed the button. Lily's group seems to think that the problem is over considering we survived, and in fact does not apologize for possibly killing us with toxic gas. I, at this point, am furious at them because they act like this was the only conclusion, and that what we learn later on that they might have been true, but actually poisoning us versus some of the latter stuff is infuriating at least. Annoyed, both parties press forward, all of us angry and mad at one another. The 2 groups have their own conversations. Lily's side is concerned that the other group might be a little angry about them releasing the toxic gas on them, while the MC is more concerned about Kuroi's health. The next trap is the same as the other, with us in parallel rooms. The next room has a code that will flash and needs to be input on both sides. The MC group asks Kuroi if she can do it, and she agrees, though Enri suggests that she messes up on purpose to get back the other side. On Lily's side, Tsukasa isn't sure she should be the one doing the memorization puzzle, considering again, Tsukasa's nonchalant attitude got toxic gas released on them. It's a quick flash of numbers, but Kuroi supposedly has it memorized and inputs the code only for a couple of convicts to be released into the room. I will note that the door on Lily's side opened up immediately, probably suggesting that if she failed or succeeded, both doors would have opened regardless, but the others don't think that much. I'm really annoyed simply because it really feels like the group is simply picking on Kuroi at this point, but also it's a relatively normal fight with convicts. It's really not that bad of a punishment, again compared to the toxic gas that they released on our group. The group continues to blame Kuroi, who's now having another mental breakdown with all this pressure. Sue then points out, siding with us, that it's probably a trap that would have activated regardless of what we did. We all move on, but Mizuki stops just before leaving, thanking Kuroi for doing her best even if the trap went off. Yurine comforts her, however, telling her she did great, and that she did her best, and everyone chimes in to support Kuroi. We see in a separate cutscene that Mizuki realizes that Kuroi is depressed and that yelling at her wasn't justified to everyone, though Lily is annoyed that Mizuki is taking Kuroi's side. The 2 meet up and Lily asks for an apology about the last door, and Shinoa rightfully says no, I will add. Enri again comes over the comms and makes fun of us before revealing that the next trap is effectively a rhythm game, and apparently Lily has never heard of a rhythm game before. Mizuki is the one who volunteers, and while Tsukasa also volunteers, the 2 downplaying Mizuki's ability, Sue is annoyed that she's taking this so nonchalantly. Mizuki then emphatically volunteers, and while Lily tries to talk her out of it, she insists and says she won't listen to Lily anymore. Lily claims she's trying to actually protect her, but Mizuki has started the rhythm game. To everyone's surprise, it actually is. She's pretty successful, and at the last 5 seconds, however, it speeds up to impossible speeds. Having failed, we cut over to the other side, a delayed reaction, but there is an explosion that ends up doing some damage to us. The blame game is once again going back and forth, with Mizuki getting blamed. Enri comes back on the comms and announces that the next trap is a race to the room, and we need to sprint there. On the MC side, it's a straight and easy shot to the button, to the surprise of everyone, and Enri comes online to announce that this is the final trap. So the button is in front of us will open the door. but it would need to be pressed simultaneously as the other button on the other side, so everyone is anxious about whether they'll come through. Cutting to the other side, reaching the button, is a long and winding road, which they complain about as though they've gone in circles, and while the others suggest turning around, Lily's pride won't let her. The MC's side makes fun of them for taking so long, unaware of just how long the road really was, and Enri again interrupts, informing them that they were in fact doing their best to get there, as soon as possible. We inform the group that this is the last trial, and that all that we need to do is press the button simultaneously. And surprisingly, Lily and Shanoa actually do it, setting their differences aside. The problem is now that everyone has to face each other after all that they did to one another. The group hash it out with one another, with Lily claiming they almost died, and I'm again just a little annoyed because they only had to deal with the consequence of a single trap that was basically a fight with regular convicts, while the MC was subjected to toxic gas and explosion, so no, it's not the same. Sue suggests we try laying out what we know definitively, though Tsukasa stirs the pot to everyone's annoyance. During explanations, blaming Korei comes up, and she again freaks out due to the seeming stress of everyone arguing. She tries running off on her own, and Sue is in hot pursuit to find her. Tsukasa, frustrated, also leaves. Shinoa decides that it's time to settle the squabble over leadership by holding a quick electoral vote of who's really in charge. Yurine and Mizuki vote for Shinoa to Lily's dismay, revealing that Mizuki would have voted for her. Distraught by the seeming betrayal of Mizuki, she runs off with Mizuki chasing after her. Yurine and the MC try to go rush after everyone, but Shinoa says she's in no rush in spite of being the newly elected leader. Yurine doesn't like her attitude, and now Shinoa looks down on everyone, and Yurine tries to play it off, but Yurine lays it on, that everyone knows about the little personality flaw of her being overly judgmental. Shinoa tries to dismiss the idea and argues her side, but Yurine tells her it's okay to be flawed and inefficient, before the MC and Yurine rush off to help everyone. First, we cut to Kurei's rescue, and she's just done with it all, it seems again giving up entirely. A convict appears with her accepting her fate before Sue rushes in to save her, trying to rush her back to the group. Sue tells her that they're going to go, but Kuroi claims she wants to die. Sue slaps her and tells her about all the suffering that would be subjected and she wants to help her. We confirm that Kuroi had apparently committed suicide and she's just exhausted with living at this point and tired of the pain. Sue then relents and says if that's what she truly wants, but lets Kuroi know that it would affect everyone meaningfully, including her, if she really went through with that, and that she would always be on Sue's mind after. Kuroi simply asks why, and Sue tells her that's what death really means, that it's not something simple and that these decisions have meaning to them. Kuroi says she doesn't know if she can keep going and that she doesn't even know how to try. Sue informs her that she has been through this entire time, facing everything by putting on a brave face, and Sue won't forget that ever. Kuroi then calls Sue brave, and she says she's just short-tempered, and then Kuroi asks if she can get stronger, and Sue lets her know that they'll get stronger together. Kuroi finishes with trying to be good girls, and Sue affirming they'll end up being good girls. Another convict appears, and Kuroi puts on a brave face ready to fight it, and Sue asks that instead of using Baron all the time, that she'll just tell her how she really feels. This is honestly my favorite moment in the game, and it's really touching to know how Sue cares for her. Love their dynamic, even if it's really short, and especially with some of the info we get later on. Next is Mizuki and Lily. Lily thinks that Mizuki was tricked, and that the two of them should just finish the tower together, but she's rejected by Mizuki. Mizuki tells her that she's afraid of people being nice to her since it reminds her of how her parents left her, a reality she has come to terms with, it seems, then reminds Lily that she's not her real sister. She lets Lily know she's being manipulative and that Mizuki recognizes now that there are good and bad people around her. Lily tries to defend herself, but Mizuki realizes that she's still just projecting her actual little sister onto her, and Lily, feeling abandoned, just tries to give up. Mizuki then fights a convict to protect her. Tsukasa and Yurine then meet together, with Tsukasa trying to act like she doesn't care, but Yurine sees through that facade, saying as she helped in a multitude of ways, and whether she wants to admit it or not, she does care about the group. Her attitude seems to be driven out of a pseudo-selfish desire to live her own life, her way. But that seems to be just to spite her mother. The two make up and seem to be in high spirits, taking some playful jabs at one another. Apparently in the rush to find Tsukasa, Yurine left us behind, which Tsukasa teases her for. Cutting back to Mizuki and Lily, Mizuki is struggling before being joined by Sue and Kure. Sue talks some sense to Lily, saying that her projection seems to be a coping mechanism for her stress. She comes to terms that she can't just use Mizuki to replace her sister, and switches to her being friends. It's nowhere near as impactful as Kure and Sue, but it's a nice sentiment. Unfortunately though, the four encounter a giant convict only for it to be felled by Yurine in a single hit. So 6 of the girls are assembled, each a little better off than when they left each other. That leaves the lone Shinoa. Shinoa is off fighting a bunch of convicts, complaining about the others, her showing some doubts about her actions. Our main character shows up again, just in time to save her from a convict, though getting injured in the process yet again. She tries to tend our wounds, but realizes that she can't do it on her own. She comes to realize that she doesn't have all the answers and can't do everything on her own, that she needs other people. Well, the other girls show up, fixing our wounds, and she's relieved, ending up hugging Lily and apologizing to her. So now, with the whole party back together, we move on to escaping the floor. We encounter the boss Evil Play, and she is a convict who apparently can turn delinquents into dolls. Beating them, everyone celebrates their victory as we get to return to the Reformation proper. Except Enri shows up again. She's kinda annoyed that we're still together since the trick traps were meant to split everyone apart. Enri does point out that we still haven't found the convict amongst our group, so they'll probably throw us back down here again, except now everyone is determined to do it together, not caring whether the convict is there or if there even is one. Enri is a bit shocked by everyone's determination as she tries to cast doubts, but it's met by everyone refuting them. She then heals everyone to our shock. She finds humans beautiful apparently, and this determination has inspired her, disappearing now seemingly satisfied. No one is entirely sure what just happened, but note that we're probably going to see her again later. Finally, we've cleared bloody hell and teleport back to the cell blocks in hell proper. Presumably then, sometime afterwards, Tsukasa decides she wants to live selfishly, and begins hanging out with a gang, something that the shadow version of her laments as part of her sin, suggesting that she was going to do something before she presumably died. We then head back to the other floors and get her sin item, a bunch of pills. Confronting Tsukasa's shadow, we learn presumably she was going to, do drugs. She basically then vows not to live selfishly and believe in the vision her mother set forth and not do drugs. Her shadow self, out of all of them, was the most annoying fight due to her constantly applying slowing buffs to our characters, but she had low health and the poison kept applying through auto venom, which helped a lot throughout the fight. Next up was Yurine. How I thought would have completely different problem based off of her personalities, but I guess not. I honestly thought she'd be more like the person complicit in not speaking up about friends stealing or just having generally poor morality, but when it comes to her lackadaisical attitude, apparently though her sin was lying, and while everyone else's sins, while exaggerated, have some logic to them, her lies are just insane. One of them being that she apparently rescued a boy from drowning, with the city apparently even offering her a key to the city type deal, but there was no boy she saved, and all I have to say is that no one checked to see about the boy she saved. Her whole thing seems to be lying for her own benefit, and of course fighting her shadow self, she vows to be more honest going forward. Following that is Koroi, who actually has probably the most tragic in terms of her own actions and perceptions. We see her parents effectively at a young age, for Koroi express that they only love her and care for her because they think she can be some kind of genius. Her mother pushes this genius level of intellect on her at such a young age, conflating her eidetic memory to intelligence or photographic memory, probably due to just a general lack of awareness. As Kuroi grows up, her grades begin to slip, her parents begin fighting more and more frequently, and Kuroi retreats feeling that her failures are the reason for her family growing more distant from one another. She begins to retreat in her own mind, seemingly regressing in terms of age, which is when she brings to use Baron as a support structure for her. Her sin in life, however, seems to be giving up. It's implied via the future of her shadow self that her parents separate, or that might have even been the current reality, I'm not sure, and she kind of takes herself out, which is fairly tragic. Go to find her item, which is a bunch of failing exams. and when confronted with it, Kuroi confirms that she doesn't want to give up. She wants to keep on fighting even if that means she isn't actually a genius. She'll grow. Mizuki is probably one of the weakest in terms of her actual sin. We find her at home with her grandmother, who effectively welcomes her into her home. A younger Mizuki asks when her parents will be coming for them, and her grandmother effectively lying to her saying they'd come eventually. But of course, that wasn't true. Her life with her grandmother seems to be largely fine until Mizuki begins piecing together that her family isn't coming back for her. She begins seeing her grandmother, who's giving Mizuki all these chores like learning how to cook, cleaning, and the other basic necessities one might need to know, as a bit of burdensome actions. Mizuki interprets these as means of getting rid of her, since once she's self-sufficient, her grandmother would happily abandon her. Mizuki shouts at her grandmother that she doesn't love her and then runs away, which seems to be her actual sin apparently. It's a little unclear, either the sin is not going back to ask for forgiveness or running away in the first place. It's still unclear to me. Anyway, we go to find her item, which is a hairpin heirloom that her grandmother gave her. And when her shadow self is confronted with Mizuki realizing that her grandmother was just trying to help her, so she'll forgive her or whatnot. We fight her shadow self and then conclude she'll apologize to her grandmother. Sue is next, and while I haven't brought it up because I will go over them in the endings portion, it's critical to know that most of Sue's wishes have been throughout her body image. We learned that she was born sickly, her body not absorbing nutrients apparently, and spent a long time in the hospital. This seems to be the origin of her matter-of-fact attitude, attributed to her long being isolated from children of her own age and just reading seemingly everything she could. Well, she gets better and is immediately bullied at school when kids stealing a coin purse from her and throwing it in the incinerator. That, however, was a gift from her father for her getting out of the hospital. Infuriated and being a genius, apparently she decides to ruin that kid's life. And to that extent, I'm like, it's kinda cruel, but not really a sin per se. She found out the kid was, or at least the kid's parents were committing a crime, and sentenced them effectively, which condemned his life and all, etc, etc. Confronting the shadow self, she realizes she shouldn't just ruin people's lives just because they slighted her. Tacitly, I'll agree with that sentiment, though not for me to say that it's a hell-worthy type of sin. Lily, we learn that despite her high esteem for the family name and seemingly comes from class, it hasn't been like that as of late. Apparently her father took a gamble on starting a new business, which unfortunately failed. The Arasagawas losing their fortune and a lot of their pride. Lily notices that everyone is bullying her sister in part due to the fact that they lost their fortune, and Lily blames her father for this, and he seems pretty depressed about this, but offers his daughter an admittedly cheap but heartfelt music box, which Lily rejects outright, saying it was a waste of their money. We learn from the shadow self that when retrieving the items that Lily was being overly cruel to her father, which caused him to shut himself off into his study and deal with his depression. Lily realizes, confronting the shadow self, that she just can't blame her father for everything and needs to encourage him and help her family, which is nice, especially when we see her take that to heart in her endings. Finally, Shinoa, we see her being manipulative as usual, and Shinoa starts to manipulate her best friend, and her friend begins aware that Shinoa is manipulating her, and those around her, starting to confront Shinoa over it. Shinoa, of course, tries to dismiss this, but after learning of her best friend having a boyfriend, causing her grades seemingly to slip as she also is paying less attention to Shinoa. So, similar to Tomoe's experience in the first game, she manipulates her boyfriend into breaking up with her, and when her best friend just wants her to tell the truth, only for her to lie again, and lose her friend. Confronting her problem involves her noting that she won't just manipulate people and be more honest with them. Everyone's problems are resolved, and thusly, everyone is happy, all things considered. Resolving their sins, we then fight the main boss, a worm-like creature named Chaos Hollow, whose mouth reminds me of the Devil Joe. Defeating it, a sound comes over the radio, and we hear an ongoing battle. Toko lets us know that the system manager of Hell came back online and is fighting back and is winning, but again, like last time, the angry convicts are taking it out on the instructors. We tell the group we have to save her, and everyone gleefully goes along wanting to save Toko, as she's helped us so much so far. To be fair, Toko has done little but inform us about going down the straight away path, but I still want to save her. So we go to the new area for the Girls' Garden, which more or less confirms, I think, that Hell is specifically for women in this universe, or at least this version, and there's a separate one for men. I mean, throughout we've yet to see a male delinquent, though we've seen male convicts. Entering the new area is beautiful, but the war and fight is still raging on. But it seems that security of Hell also sees us as intruders, so we need to fight them as well. Defeating the security, Togo informs us that the security will be hostile to us obviously, and that to really survive is to achieve knighthood. Knighthood is like it was last time, proving one has been reformed or has a righteous soul, but apparently while it used to take time and items and drugs, as it did last time, it can be achieved through standard determination now. The battery finally depletes, and Toko says goodbye, and that the rescue mission begins now. We encourage everyone that they can achieve knighthood and that will save Toko. This chapter is kinda average at best, as we've kinda peaked with each of our characters, not getting the drug to get knighted, but kind of okayish moments tonight. Shinoa and Lily are the first to transform as they fight some of the stronger convicts. We encounter two who seem to be stronger when they're together, and so a plan is devised to split them into two parties. The two's moments seem to be them bleeding together in defense of their friends and not giving up. Their transformations actually resemble that of two knights proper, with Lily seemingly the shield while Shinoa is the sword, though their outfits leave a lot to be desired in my opinion, with Shinoa's in particular feeling disjointed from her personality. The two emerge from the fight as now trusted allies, the two shocked that they synchronize together with them still arguing, though more or less they're fine. We continue eventually and see a lone convict in a room, and smartly Tsukasa intuits that they're not alone and goes on ahead. She is then ambushed by a couple of convicts and we're locked into the area. She offers to act as bait, and Mizuki steps up to find out which of the convicts they need to defeat, and the two are attacked and hold out as best they can. And the two then transform into knights, and not going to lie, love the two outfits, with Tsukasa's taking on a golden look, and snakes for jewelry symbols, often used in healing iconography, while Mizuki takes on a very Konoichi female ninjas, suits her quickness and energetic attitude. Now we've got two more knights, and the group celebrates, and we end up complimenting Tsukasa, which seems to actually fluster her for once. The next area, apparently, is a new system detects the group, but no enemies appear. Instead, a bright light causes Yurine and Kuroe to disappear, and oddly, we get a choice to ask between Lily and Shinoa's opinion. I chose Lily, who tells us we should search the area, which makes sense. We come across a locked room where we find Kuroe and Yurine are on the other side, fighting against a group of convicts. The two stand their ground. Kuroe suggests that she can get through the door, but needs to set off a magic bomb to open the door. So, Yurine defends Kuroe while she gets the door open. Yurine defeats the enemies around her, and Kuroe had apparently supercharged Baron into a magic bomb and makes a sacrifice of him, thanking Baron for helping her get to this point. The two knight, with Kuroe resembling a rabbit-type magician, and with a wand. Yurine has a bird-like dress image, which is kinda strange. I don't get how that fits her personality. Maybe bird-brained, I guess, is kind of the attitude. So the door now opens, we fight the struggling convicts, and of course defeat it as a team, predominantly of knights now, with one Sue being unknighted. Kuroe laments Baron's death, only for him to actually become a knight himself, somehow, with a little top hat now, which now I'm curious how a object can get a pure enough soul to grow into a knight, but I like it anyway. So we advance once more. Eventually we approach the door to the highest floor with the system manager, and the knights need to advance. And while we suggest the girls could turn back, no one wants to abandon Toko. In the rescue, admittedly, though, I'm not sure where they would have go if they didn't advance anyhow. There's no clear way to leave yet. A boss blocks the door, and, well, we beat it opening said door. To Toko, supposedly, and the battle between convicts and the system, but no one is there. Everyone is confused at the lack of anything really happening, only for Maya to show up. Maya is surprised that we've made it thus far, and telling us the area is restricted and kind of forgot who we were. She congratulates us for passing the trials, but she's not going to apologize for her actions. We ask her about the war, but she says it's over, and the instructors are just cleaning up the stragglers, and that there are no hostages, and the system is in recovery. She also supposedly never heard of Toko, and that Even if she was an instructor, she wouldn't be here. She notes that the door isn't able to be opened without a knight, so there wouldn't be any convicts here, and the riot in the upper floors never happened. We were tricked. Maya presses forward, suggesting that we can advance and that it's against policy. We ask her to keep an eye out, at least for Toko, and we start to leave before Sue speaks up, saying Maya isn't even an instructor, that she's a convict. How would Sue know this information? Well, turns out Sue is a convict herself, which was actually a really good twist. The game throws out that there might not be a convict in our group early, though I thought it was going to be one of those obvious there wasn't never a convict, and they were just doing sowing doubt in everyone type thing. So I was actually pleasantly surprised by them going this route, and to be fairly interesting, they kind of alluded to her being a convict throughout, with her having a much more tolerant approach to a convict being part of the group, which I hadn't quite noticed. She never really made any accusations and would defend the others when accused. It's quite good, actually. Anyway, Sue joined slipping into the group in hopes of being reformed and escaping hell. Maya then tries to send Sue back to hell, but everyone steps up to defend her, no one caring that she was a convict since she's now part of our team. Maya then tries to say we shouldn't trust Sue, who reveals that how she knows Maya is faking is because she brought up our MC's memory loss. Sue recalls that only the delinquents and Toko should know about our character's memory loss, because they never told Maya about it. Ergo, Sue concludes that that means Maya is actually Toko, having sent us to hell and helping us out of it so we could open the door once becoming knighted. Maya is actually caught off guard and seems to have some control over the system as a whole, as she somehow stuns us. Annoyed that we found her out, and even she's surprised that Sue is a convict, her apparently having seeded that information without actually any knowledge, so yeah, that there is a convict in your group was kind of just a throwaway line for her. She intends to kill the group painlessly as she thanks for her help, and she of course reveals that her plan was to take over the tower. And we learn a bit about her motivations. She finds the reformation process is deplorable with so few delinquents passing that she wants to destroy it, and evidently, based off the 2 games, I'd say she's right. There's definitely needs to be a reform to the system. Sue defends the idea of the system, however, and her friends transforming into her knight form, something that seems to please Maya. Sue plans on defending the group, and while Maya is confident that she can take Sue, as the other groups are still stuck, a bright light shines upon the group, freeing them. Annoyed at the freedom of the group, Maya leaves and we begin our pursuit. Following her, we fortunately encounter the next boss, the Grim Reaper, which Maya has apparently summoned, and it's still incredibly powerful, even if we're all right. The Grim Reaper fights as expected, is a rough, having a lot of AoE attacks and high damaging moves, can be capable of casting 2 AoEs in a single turn, taking out most, if not all, my character's health rather easily, along with stat debuffs that are incredibly painful. This boss in particular is when Kuroi starts shining the most and really shows you just how important of a party member she really is, as her ice attacks cause Slow the best debuff in the game, and I'm not exaggerating. As characters have, as I've observed, a say 70 to 80% chance of missing at 2 stacks of Slow, and keeping that on enemies becomes a primary strat, and man, it is annoying when Kuroi just refuses to use an ice move. So after we beat the Grim Reaper, he immediately regenerates before Enri shows up, making the Grim Reaper disappear once again. Another big reveal happens when we realize that Enri was actually the system manager of Hell this entire time, and has been in control, or at least partial control, of the Hell Spire. Big surprise, Enri was a good guy, and she is also the one who sent the light to unfreeze us earlier. Enri is apparently the new system manager after the one who was presumably destroyed by Maya and vanished. She's still relatively weak right now, but has been growing in power, which she uses to justify her immaturity from earlier as well. Enri asks us to help, and the group agrees to save the Hell Spire before returning to the New World, leaving the Spire in the hands of Enri, who's learned the best qualities they could impart is now the mission. Her energy is running low, and she makes a joke about opening a portal. It'll be the first time a guy has entered her room, so be nice. The next floor is the manager's floor, and it is about the same as it was in the first game, with some familiar sights making sense here. The goal now is simply beat Maya together, put Enri in charge, and finally end the Reformation to the real world. This floor acts as a classroom floor which justifies or allows us to see more of the logic of Maya, and honestly her anger at the system seems justified. First we see her with a convict assuring her the Reformation is possible, being stern but admittedly logical, giving her a job and mission to guide the delinquents. The second, we see a delinquent on the verge of giving up, with Maya assuring her that she can do it, she just needs to face her guilt and reform, with her promising to stick with her. The delinquent just wants friends and seemingly wants to be loved, though Maya simply laughs because she doesn't have that kind of experience in her life. The game does a great job at demonstrating just what kind of person Maya used to be, at least. Her next memory is her meeting a callous program instructor, but with Maya assuring her that the process makes sense, with the program instructor seemingly looking up to her. Maya, however, is getting disillusioned by the system's manager, as it is very computer-like, showing no nuance in helping the delinquents, which Maya has apparently filed these concerns with the system managers, but hasn't been addressed. The group is confused where it went wrong, as this all seems perfectly rational, nothing wrong with what Maya points out. Reaching a new area, we see one of the delinquents, who according to the premise of the memory takes place at the classroom floor, and she plans on taking herself out as she doesn't want anyone seeing her memories. Maya tries to calm the girl down, but it seems she wasn't successful. As a result, the girl seemingly becomes a convict. Maya confronts the system manager that some convicts just need a second chance, only for the system manager to shut her down, saying they already had their chance, with Maya arguing it's unethical to just give them one. Maya begs that they're just human, though the manager doesn't budge, and isn't happy that she's arguing with it, putting her on suspension. Her next memory is her being surrounded by her colleagues under arrest, as apparently she was checking on her students under suspension, and apparently the manager has spread the rumor that she wants to start a coup against the system. All Maya says she wants to do is reform the system and ask the other instructors to help her out. Soon, though, she's banished to Hell, along with the others. In Hell now, without the resources of the program, her and her students, who she seems to have saved for a while, are tired and injured, running away from convicts in pursuit of her. They come to the conclusion that the only way for Maya to survive is for Maya to grow stronger like the convicts do, by consuming her students and gaining their strength. All the students ask is that she keeps trying to reform the system for everyone's sake, so presumably she begins cannibalizing her students and gets stronger. Our group isn't happy about it, but suggests that something has gone wrong and they need to stop her. I really do like Maya's backstory, because honestly I'd be on her side, as it becomes clear that she only had good intentions, being pushed by a system that remained too stagnant to really be helpful to those it supposedly wanted to help. We even see she was right that delinquents who had become convicts could reform and even go so far as becoming knights, which makes it even more tragic because we see she was absolutely correct. All they need is a second chance. Last of the memories, we see Maya and Enri confronting each other. Maya acknowledges Enri as the new manager, and the two seem to be of roughly equal strength, but Enri has used up a lot of her energy. We learn that apparently when a system manager dies, a new one is created with the opposite personality, and while the last one, likely Shaitan, died, Enri was born caring for humans. Enri reveals her personality, or her philosophy at least, that she doesn't understand humans, but knows that just maybe they're worth saving. The group catches up and Maya is surprised we didn't return to reality. Maya says that an AI can't truly help humans and she'll replace it herself. Enri realizes that Maya hasn't just eaten the souls of her original students, but possibly thousands of convicts to obtain her current strength. Maya begins laughing, deviously revealing they gave their souls willingly so she could reform Hell. Enri realizes that she can't stop her at her strength, and suggests we run, and we of course tell her we won't run, we're going to stick it through, saying this is why she wants to protect humans. Enri entrusts us with part of her powers. Maya, fed up with this, starts her fight, and this fight isn't so bad, this boss fight being a little about endurance and pretty basic. Finishing her off, she's gone, and Enri is revealed, having saved the tower. Everyone is curious about what happens to Maya, but seems she went to another dimension, Enri going to separate their souls from her, and while it will take time, Enri will wait. Enri understands that Maya was admittedly in the right, with the other managers losing interest in saving humans. And honestly, with what we learned from the past game, maybe have been more concerned about just getting paid. So we suggest that, had they met earlier, we might have even helped Maya. Opening up the portal, the reformation process ends. We're given the options to get our ending, with even Sue being officially reformed by Enri, seeing as she achieved knighthood, of course. Enri is going to reform the reformation program, and now the portal allows only one person at a time, however, to leave, and the group makes it our choice on who wants and who gets to leave first, while the system is being repaired. This brings us to our first choice of endings, and forewarning, there are a total of 15 endings to this game, 2 for each girl and 1 special ending. Now, during the first set, there are only 7, and I'm going to go over the girls' wishes in this set of endings as well. We'll also be going in order of the listed characters. So I'll go again in order everyone was redeemed. This wasn't the order that I chose in the game or that was listed in the game. Also, I will also note I grinded at times within recording footage, and sometimes received the start of wishes outside of recording, and they're not exactly well documented, so again, apologize. You'll get the gist of it. Tsukasa is the first one. Tsukasa's first wish was her basically bored, wishing to play a game of some kind. She suggests something in the way that our character blushes, and suggests that we find some cards and she can show us how to play an actual game with her. We retrieve the item, and man do we play poorly, with Tsukasa teasing us that just how bad we are, though she leaves happy. We are, however, disappointed we couldn't even win once. The second wish, Tsukasa's throat is sore. It seems that she wants to drink a carbonated beverage to refresh it. We recall a naturally carbonated spring in an area, heading there to get her a drink, and the carbonated beverage is surprisingly pleasant, and Tsukasa even gives us a sip, though it seems to go down the wrong pipe, and Tsukasa laughs at us. We compliment her smile before she calls us weird for always being so genuine, and it kinda disarms her remarks. Her third wish, we remark about the lollipop she's always eating, and ask her for where she gets them. She says it's a secret, and however, she can give us a hint if we bring her some fruit. Bring her the fruit, she makes some lollipops and puts one in her mouth with strawberry and grape flavoring, which is an intense mixture, apparently. We, of course, come to the realization that she makes them herself, and while I wonder how she does this given we have no kitchen here in hell. At the final wish, we see Tsukasa showing off some books she's reading for studying. She tells us that she has volume 2, but is missing 1 and 3 down here. She suggests we look for the others, books to resemble the set, noting that the books are fairly rare. Finding the other books, the set is assembled, and while we suggest we can read the story, well, she mentions that these aren't novels, but instead medical books. She says she struggles with the material, though we cheer her on. She tries to say she owes us a debt, though we dismiss it, saying she owes us nothing, before she notes that she wants to drop the perception of her as our student. We tell her to stop joking about that, but informs us she's not joking, telling us that apparently aggressive women seem to confuse us, but she'll teach us eventually. First up, ending is Tsukasa as well, who, after being chosen to go first, we have her hesitant on leaving and teasing our MC. She then, of course, returns to Earth, and we see her life as it stands. She's talking on the phone with her father about how she's studying and a lot lately, and turns out she's looking to take her medical exams because she wants to make her mother happy when she wakes up. And her father says she's really proud of the daughter, and it's quite frankly a touching scene. Yurine's first wish involves getting her brooch from a magazine article. We can't get it exactly right, so we find the materials making a similar one. Yurine seems happy, and Hal, it turns out, saying she feels even stronger already, except after putting it on, she realizes that it was all marketing and a bunch of convicts show up. Supposedly the item is cursed, though I'm not sure if our character is just making a joke. The second wish was Yurine's complaining to us about Tsukasa teasing her, suggesting that she kinda wants to get her back. Well, Yurine recalls that Tsukasa doesn't react well to nice acts, and she wants to get her back with one. She then decides and realizes Tsukasa has trouble falling asleep, and suggests that she might have insomnia and that a nice scent might help her fall asleep. We finish up and show it off, giving a nice scented thing to her. She lights it to test the scent, only to fall asleep herself, and, she then gives it to Tsukasa supposedly afterwards. Third wish, Yurine walks up to us and lets us know that her foot's bothering her and she wants to go to a sauna to work out the stress. So we go to search for a sauna together. We find a spot in the Hell layer, which produces a lot of steam, The two of us supposedly relax, easing the pain in her weary bones. A convict shows up, interrupting us, though it ends up chasing Urine around. Urine's final wish involves getting together items to put together a charm she heard about, so getting the charm materials, we give them to her and she assembles it. She puts it on and we notice that it's crooked, and Urine informs us she's not a very good sewer. We tell her it's really good still, and she gives us one, informing us they're meant as pairs. She tells us as a result of helping her, she's gained a goal and she's happier now. We ask her about the goal, but she tells us she'll be keeping it close to her chest and that the charm has the power of love in them. She then backs away, telling us she'll treasure her charm before throwing a quick "I love you" out, with our character apparently having nothing to say in response. Urine follows, and her ending follows, and she doesn't want to leave her friends and makes sure that Tsukasa takes care of her family. She enters into the portal and we see her within a library one day, apparently her friends asking her if they can go hang out, but she says she really needs to focus on her homework right now. One of her friends seems to indicate that she must have had some teacher at her university really motivating her, and she tries to recall what she means by that and indicates someone motivated her, but she can't remember who it is. While this wasn't my first exposure to it, for the sake of the essay, this is the first time we're seeing it. So when you get back to Earth, unlike the prior title, you apparently forget your time in the Hellspire, unless you all return together or at the same time, it seems. So whenever they return to Earth with a change of heart, but no real idea of where this comes from, at least at this point. Lily is up next, and her first wish is for us to prepare a sweet for her. While she's used to very classy goods, she plans to make do with a snack we find. We bring her some honey and fruit, which is surprisingly good, and Lily even offers us some. She's surprised it's as good as it is, and devours it so much that she eats half of the entire portion that the rest of the group is supposed to get, and we hand out to the others. Her second wish is her noticing that the rest place is very drab, and she wants to get something for the area's atmosphere. And that seems to be a ruse to get something to relieve her stress. She wants a musical instrument, and apparently she's a jack of all instruments, something that, according to her, is common amongst the Arasugawas. Somehow we find a violin in hell, and while Lily fixes up from a somewhat decrepit state, she plays the violin for us, though there isn't a special music for this scene, to my dismay. We tell her we like it, and she offers to perform it for us again in the future. Third wish, Lily wants a basket and suggests that we can weave one herself with the materials. It's quite noticeable just how handy she really is. We bring her back and the materials and catch her handing the basket to a little creature. Apparently she's been taking care of this thing while we've been traveling, and our appearance startles her, and she trips before we catch her. She's embarrassed, asking us to let go of her. Her final wish started with her psyching herself up, before approaching us for a favor. Apparently she saw a convict with a white veil, and desiring that veil, she asked us to get it for her. This time, though, her request is much more appreciative of the fact that we're taking time out of our way for her. Retrieving, she compares the veil to that of a princess and thanks us for retrieving it. She notes she wants to change, and she wants to show us how beautiful she can be, to which we say she was always beautiful. Embarrassed by our comment, she quickly goes to put on the veil before tripping on her dress again, and seems as though we catch her. She's embarrassed, but she wants to be held for a while, before thanking us again. Lily, her ending, she was my first selection on the list, FYI. When she returns, she kind of thanks everyone about her time, and she'll always remember them. So when she returns to Earth and begins to work at a maid cafe, I'm pretty sure it's a maid cafe, not sure, we find her talking to her sister. Her sister notably indicates that Lily's demeanor has changed and being both happier and, in general, kinder. She notes that this is a way she can help her fathers and/or parents, given the circumstances, and then reminds her sister that today is her father's birthday, and on their way home, she wants to pick him up a gift. Shanoa's first wish, we encounter her shyly asking for us to cover up her smell. Apparently there isn't a lot of bathing in hell, and she wants us to get something to mask the scent. Turns out we get some flowers for her, and she plans on making a perfume on it. Shanoa also then makes some somewhat underhanded remarks implying that we smell as well. The second wish is an annoyed Shanoa, which seems to be her judgy mindset. She tells us a story about her and Lily doing self-portraits, only for Lily to laugh at her lack of artistic skills. We note it's pretty bad. and she suggests it's due to a lack of color, sending us to get some paint so she can prove Lily wrong. She finishes her painting and, well, still looks just as awful, yet she's proud enough to show it off. Her third wish starts off with a somewhat embarrassing request made by her. Apparently she's lost her undergarments, or rather an accessory on them, and so asks us to find some materials so she can make a new ribbon. Get the ribbon, and Shinoa is super happy about it, and we end up blushing, imagining the ribbon on her undergarments, though she accurately points out that we already see them during motivations. It's not that big of a deal. The final wish, we see her note that everyone seems tired lately and needs something to help with their concentration. So she plans on making everyone a good meal and suggests that we need some good meat. We obtain the meat via a convict, which is a bit morally gray considering that they're the souls of human beings, so wouldn't this be pseudo-cannibalism in a roundabout way? So we give her the meat anyway, and she gives us a sample dish to try, and it isn't that great. She's well aware of her shortcomings now and wants to grow in things she's not used to, and we tell her that's a great mindset for a potential wife. She's happy, and we tell her it's not like she's gonna find a husband down here, only for her to kind of quietly say, "Wish you were my husband." So Shinoa's ending is a little more, well, plain. I'm gonna go through it real quick. We see her hanging out with her best friend and getting along with her. Her friend, of course, comments that she's being much less manipulative, and she then inquires whether or not Shinoa wants to meet her boyfriend, and Shinoa is open to this. The first wish for Sue is for her nutrition. She has a lot of body image problems, as mentioned earlier, and believes that ingesting something high in calories will help her gain weight. She apparently read about something called the Fluff fruit, and we go searching for it, though I'm not sure where she got a book on hell fruits. She also notes that her ideal body image would be that of Urine's, but realizes that's probably not possible. We get her some fluff fruit, and we take the first bite, which apparently causes our body to swell like a balloon, and we spit it out. The result is disappointing Sue, but she seems to laugh at us, one of her early moments where we get to see the flare of her exterior break. Following that is Sue's second wish, which we see her working out, trying to develop her pecs. We suggest weights, and she agrees, asking us to bring her some, and we find them. We get a relatively light dumbbell for her, and she seems to be keeping it, well, now kinda believing that she can grow like Urine. Apparently lifting the weights, she shows some fascination with our character's muscles, beginning to examine his arms with little thought before she realizes what she's doing, and is embarrassed. Sue's third wish has her starting to notice that she's not getting the gains she wants to make. We say we've noticed that she has been making some gains, and she desperately wants us to say in her chest region, but we can only relay that she seems to be more toned now. She apparently got a suggestion from Tsukasa that dairy products might help her, and so we go to find her some. We give them to, and sometime later we see her throwing them back, and she notes that she should see some results. We note, though, that the milk will eventually spoil, and she begins to give up on achieving her ideal body. She then suggests that we wouldn't find her body appealing and is embarrassed having admitted that's part of her intentions. Her final motivation, Sue asks us if we're hungry and offers us to make some cookies she made. Unfortunately, she's mixed up the salt and sugar. She's following what she believes to be the rules to winning someone's heart based off of a manga she read, suggesting that if she can't improve her body, she'll work on her domestic skills. She then asks us what's our type, and she realizes what she's asking. This is the start of the wish, though, and I'm not sure based off its initial start what she's asking for. Unfortunately, this is the only motivation I think I may have finished while grinding and don't have footage for, so effectively, if I recall correctly, she makes better cookies and propositions herself as a future partner. I may be way off, but that's the general sentiment around the girls and their final wishes typically. So, Sue approaches the portal in her ending and is hesitant to take the opportunity. All things considered, her about lying to the group, but everyone assures her it's okay, and even still, she doesn't want to leave her only friends. Well, she leaves, of course. We see Sue at an amusement park with some friends, and she makes a statement about the efficiency of standing in line somewhere, and her friends laugh about her always trying to be so efficient, and commenting that she used to be much more standoffish, and is now much more open. The first wish for Mizuki is her training. She's trying to grow stronger and much more fearless. While we tell her it's okay to be scared, she simply refuses such an outcome, So in substitution, we suggest that she could get stronger by fighting more convicts and getting more experience. So we just have her fight, and she agrees to go after a specific convict. After fighting a convict, she's ecstatic about her improving and suggests that she'll need to keep fighting to get stronger. And though she stops because she considers us a stranger for some reason, another wish, another request to get another fight. And so, different type of convict this time. Another group down, Mizuki is proud of herself and seeks praise. She then, I think, might be getting butterflies in her stomach, and when around us and doesn't realize she has a crush, our character is clueless and thankfully does not reciprocate. Third wish, Mizuki is proud of her work, and heard from Lily if she's more situationally aware, she'll be better and so wants to learn about how to do that. We offer to help her and she graciously accepts. After demonstrating environmental awareness in a fight, she thanks us, telling us we're a good teacher, though calls herself a bird. We assure her she's never been a burden and give her a head pat, which seems to warm her heart, which is her start of her actually realizing her crush on us, I think. Her final wish starts with Mizuki asking for another training session, and she's proud of progress, but she still doesn't want to be a burden. We agree, and she calls us a nice person, asking for us to find the strongest opponent we can. Mizuki is reluctant to return in her ending, but just like everyone else, she returns, and is of course at her grandmother's house. Her grandmother tells her that she should go out and hang with her friends. Mizuki, of course, does not do that and wants to hang out with her grandmother, realizing just how much her grandmother really cares for her. Finally, we have the first wish of Kuroi, and we find her desperately searching for a pen and paper as studying has become a sort of emotional crutch for her. We tell her we haven't found one, but we'll look for some. Bringing items back, write down, Kuroi begins writing things she saw in her photographic memory. We then suggest to her that she should start writing a diary, and she seems open to the idea. During Kuroi's second wish, we notice that she's got a serious lack of sleep and suggest doing something about that. So we're off to find a solution to help her rest. We give her something really cold, which wakes her up and seems really refreshing, and then confronted on why she's not sleeping well, we learn that it's basically because apparently Mizuki will crawl on top of her at night, waking her up. Then naturally we suggest switching sleeping spots with someone else, and Kuroi under her breath wants to sleep next to us apparently. Third wish for Kuroi is after she starts calling us brother. So she wants to get new clothes for Baron as he's thankful for his help saving us search for something to give him. Baron gets his new clothes and Baron is apparently happy, though unfortunately there is no new art for Baron with this. Kuroi confirms that Baron's a really close friend and we ask to be a friend as well, which Kuroi tells us she considers us a friend for a while, and heartwarming. Her final wish starts with us picking up Kuroi's diary, and she then informs us in the clothes we found for Baron was a secret map. We point out that there are some keys to access the locations and has us look for them. When we find them, we visit a part of the map and view some of the convict butterflies all flying off together. Kuroi learning that the view was the treasure all along. And Kuroi thanks us for looking out for her, with her asking for us if we can see more places of that when we return to the real world. She's surprised we want to hang out with her in the real world, and asks that we protect her. Finally, there is Kuroi's ending, who we see on a beach, having her picture taken by a classmate. She's clearly much more outgoing, and her friend comments that he wants to visit something, and says it'll take too long if they do another thing, to which Kuroi notes she memorized the map and is aware of a shortcut. Everyone excited, and there's part of me who finds her ending the most disappointing, considering that while part of her arc was dealing with her depression, but its major actor was her parents, who receive and will receive no real information on her home life at this point. Glad she's well, but of course that wasn't the main concern about her returning to the real world. Reloading another save, and just like last time we go after the boss once more, and this time we get another ending option, which allows us to, rather than just end the boss, instead transition over to an alternate path. While we learn that Maya's soul has been sent to an alternative dimension, it's a dimension we can reach, and as she can open a portal, Enri that being, into Hell, where she's apparently draining Hell's energy, which, not gonna lie, that's going on. It's weird that Enri doesn't have us deal with that before sending us back in the first place in the other endings. So, telling her we're not finished and that we're going to save everyone, including Maya, Enri is thankful and asks the others how they feel, and they say they feel the same, knowing Maya had good intentions that were obviously corrupted. So, after beating the boss for the 8th time, or clearing it for the 2nd time on a save you've already beaten, I think, we get the additional option to tell the others that we're not done yet. Your goal is, of course, now to fix Hell and defeat Maya once and for all, as she's still occupying the Hellspire in a different dimension in some form. The new area isn't much to speak of, similar to the bonus rounds at the end of the first game. Your goal is to defeat a handful of boss conflicts to unlock Maya in her true form. I will say the enemies are much harder, and the multi-target moves and slow debuffs are this game trying to illustrate you're in hard mode at this point. Fighting enemies, however, I will say overall is more fighting the debuffs than the actual enemies themselves, as you get overwhelmed with just negative status effects. It doesn't help that you're still restricted also to 1 item per turn, so you're going to constantly be using that item turn to fix their stats, either healing a party or just removing a debuff that cripples you. So, 4 bosses unlock the pathway to Maya, and we get some more insight into what her thought process is about the Hellspire, or at least what brought her here. Seems when she was in school, people would ridicule her for her shyness. Then, as an instructor, during her teaching, they tried to instill some confidence within her, with her students seeming to reject the process of reformation as she stares on silently. We then confront her spirit of what remains of her, it seems, and she isn't surprised we'd come to her, and she somewhat regrets the idea of killing Enri. We suggest Maya reform Hell, but she rejects that as she doesn't believe an AI like Enri can really help humanity. The girls try to stop her from destroying the Hellspire, but upon hearing the idea of destroying the Hellspire, she suddenly decides that destroying it would be more effectively to destroy Hell, although that seems to be her own hyperbole. Maya then begins to absorb our power, or rather the convicts inside her are absorbing our power. We then tell her that we're not going to give up and that we're proud of the girl's growth, and Maya then alludes to us having a sin, which I'm assuming is related to us either abandoning our sister. That plot point is still dead, though. We've got no idea about our past completely, as I don't think it's a sin. Everyone then defends us and defends the idea of reformation and illustrate better what their sins are. Lily is harming others, Kuroi is self-harm, Mizuki is trust, Tsukasa is being stuck in despair, Sue is fixing one's mistake, and Yurine is doing the right thing. Shinoa doesn't really state hers, but we basically know it's manipulating others. They then give some lines that I'm not sure where they picked up on. Shinoa and Lily together state, "My sword will cure your hate and calm your rage." Kuroi and Tsukasa in unison, "It will direct the lost onto the righteous path and convert the envious." And Mizuki, Yurine, and Sue, "We hold the light of trust. Without any doubt, falsehoods or revenge, the 7 lights shine, and then together, we are the 7 knights, we possess the great light, and we will repel all sin." Which, cool and all, but when did we rehearse this? Did I miss something? Like, they were just sinners, and to be fair, there are a total of 16 knights at this point, including those of the first game, and maybe many more, which I'm not going to bring up just yet. So this isn't, as far as I'm aware, some kind of prophecy. The 7 Knights is just some titles the girls gave themselves. Little bit of a nitpick, but feels like there was probably a plan for more of a prophecy within the story, but it hadn't been shown proper. So, the group fights Maya, and let's go into a little more detail of this particular fight. Maya's ultimate fight is a pain. Not so much because it is hard, because it is, but because it's unfair and you have to do it another 8 times if you want all the endings. Because guess what? Each girl has yet another ending. So split up into 3 parts is Maya's body, 2 arms and a main body. The main body is much healthier than the arms, so you have to take out the arms first, or at least you really should. Now the 2 arms, there is a clear priority, the first being her status arm. Now, the status arm isn't like, oh, I have a choice of which arm to take out first. No, you are taking out her status arm, because the status arm also does healing. Now, at this point in the game, my characters are level 50 and are pretty much what I'd say as strong as you need. The grinding being more tedious after this and much less effective with the normal enemies. So with my casting skills, I do roughly about 600 and 800 damage per turn, with super strong spells being around 1,000 damage. This status arm can apply a heal, which restores for one time 2,000 to 3,000 HP, which is annoying, but wait, it can then do a regen buff, which restores 600 damage per turn. So you're going to be pulling your hair out if it does both of these in 2 turns, because you are restricted to 1 attack per turn and still 1 item per turn. So that arm alone can waste 4 turns of effort and reset you down to square one with 1 move. Alright, so then there's the magic arm. The magic arm isn't nearly as annoying in a vacuum. It does high magic damage to individuals, but its biggest problem is that it has a literal insta-kill move, which when you're hit by it, there's a chance, regardless of your health, that you'll just be wiped out. It's not as problematic as the status hand, but is still fairly annoying when they work together. Now comes the biggest problem, Maya's main body. So Maya gets 2 turns, and she can do any of her attacks during them. Her least problematic attack is Devil's Greed, an attack which restores some health to her, but nowhere near as egregious as the old status hands. Next is Downpour, her multi-target attack, which she'll use both turns to use. So long as you've been keeping her debuffed throughout the fight, you can largely ignore this one and use it as a free turn. If you haven't, this can be a full wipe to your party. This only happened once in my, we'll say, 50 fights with her. After about half health, she can regen her arms, but you can kill these in a single turn, so that's not really a problem. Brute's Vulgarity is a multi-hit attack, which does a pretty significant amount of damage, and is what she'll be using a majority of the time. It hurts, but Lily using Revenge can honestly, you can use this to do around 2,000 damage a turn, and can be your strongest damage output. And then comes her most annoying ability, Hellgroan. The Hellgroan is an AoE debuff, which applies Paralysis, Poison, Confusion, and Swap Lock, and is guaranteed to hit on all of your characters. If you don't have group remedies or remedies, this becomes the bane of your existence, because with Confusion, you can't act, so all your characters are locked for a turn. The Swap Lock then means you can't swap someone out and have them take a turn. Maya likes this move a lot, and with how little group remedies the game gives you, grinding to buy them pre-battle is pretty much necessary, and I mean actually necessary. That all said, there's a semi-necessary order to combat Defeat's status arm, and start disabling it from either healing by paralyzing or slowing it because they can miss heals. All your attacks are directed initially to that and hoping you can stay alive from the other hands. You then go after the magic arm. Its debuff state doesn't necessarily matter that much, you just need to kill it. And then for the rest of the fight, you debuff via slowing and paralysis the main body in hopes of stopping Hellgroan from proccing on your character, so you can continue fighting. The entire battle after that is just making sure Maya is debuffed enough and that you can keep up with health and what Hellgroan manages to land. So it's a very bad, poorly balanced battle in my opinion, but that's besides the point. Afterwards though, the girls are around Maya as she begins to fade. Her sanity regained, kind of. She apologizes for what she's done and the path she took. We reassure her that she had good intentions, only wanting to help those stuck as convicts in hell before she fades into a butterfly. The others are saddened, and we question whether we could have saved her, though the girls assure us we did what we could, and we get praised by everyone. Returning back, we head to see Enri, who is thankful as well. After all, hell is now saved, and with her new view of humanity, she can better reform those in hell, and looks to do so with reformation of convicts at this point. Now, unlike last time, we're all able to return together, which brings us to the point of our 8 endings. Following our request to go home, Enri asked us whether or not we'd be able to remain in hell in order to manage it. For the sake of this, we're going to start, of course, in the order that I started last time though for our endings. Tsukasa, Yurine, Lily, Shinoa, Sui, Mizuki, and Kuroe. There also isn't any more girls' wishes to go over, so it'll be a bit faster this time. Tsukasa's ending is probably the most outright romantic in terms of the future. The two have been together as we discuss how she got a B on her practice exam. She's proud of it, and with our help in studying, her grades are going up. She, of course, is still looking to go into the medical field. She proceeds to tease us again, like in the first chapter, but we state, or I'll have to teach you some real stress relief, which I think means the two are more romantically involved in this point in their relationship. We've also apparently made a promise to be with her the day she passes, and we'll do whatever she wants. She then, of course, tells us she's so happy right now. Yurine's ending is similar to her first one, but I do want to bring up the dialogue before we enter into the ending. When Yurine asks us what we're going to do, we make a statement that we're an ordinary student, which is the only implication of our own age that we have. Assuming that we're in college, our character is therefore somewhere between, I think, the ages of 18 to 22, which might imply that Yurine and Tsukasa might be older than us, but of course, nothing is certain about that. Okay, now for the actual ending, which is the funniest, we cut to Yurine, teary-eyed and frustrated as she is studying. We keep telling her that she needs to keep studying as her grades ended up slipping. We tell her that she needs to finish and we can slow down later, and she apologizes for always relying on us for studying, though. We tell her we like studying with her. Anyway, she then asks us if we know her major, and we tell her that we know it's education, and she states that everyone laughed at her when she told them. We tell her, though, that we know she can become a great teacher, and Yurine says that she wanted to become someone like the person that we were during the Reformation. She then states she wants to stay with us and be a great teacher, and it's kind of warming. Lily, when we return, in her ending, she's still working at the cafe, and her sister surprises her with bringing us to the cafe, which she apparently hadn't told anyone about her working there. Apparently we're both working now, and we're acquainted with her family in general. She reiterates that her sister is kinda like Mizuki before she gets a call with her father coming over to meet her at the cafe to see her at work. She then states that she'll remain at her side, and then calls us darling. Shinoa, admittedly, as the first one on the list, was the first one I selected, but I thought it was the same cutscene initially, because the art is the exact same as the first endings, and you can actually see in the footage the moment I realized that, oh, the dialogue is different. With Shinoa again, and she and her friend are hanging out, the two talk about how she's different and are asked to introduce her boyfriend to her best friend. She then asks what she likes most about us, and says to sum it up that we're a teacher to her, which I don't know what exactly about that means as a compliment. Sui's ending oddly feels the most distant from her character. Well, we're at the amusement park, and apparently we're going to hang out with her friends. Her friends, however, tricked her because this is a date that they set us up on, and they wanted to give us some time to hang out with one another alone. She tells us that she's not some convict who has to follow orders, and is shocked when we say we're aware she's just a normal, cute girl, and she suggests a handful of rides and is thankful that someone seems to see her as a regular girl. Mizuki is the only one where we're completely absent from the ending, which makes sense, I will agree, but is fascinating at least. She and her grandmother are getting ready for us to come over and visit her. Her grandma again is impressed by her maturity since she's returned, and her grandma even going so far as to joke that she'll outgrow her eventually. When asked what we're like, Mizuki actually reiterates some real qualities unlike Shinoa, and then utters that her face gets flushed when around us, but she doesn't understand exactly what that means. She does at the end admit that she loves us and her grandma, but doesn't differentiate this love, I think. I also believe that, similar to Kuroi, the MC simply sees Mizuki as someone under his care, not necessarily as a romantic interest, in this particular ending at least. Kuroi is interesting as I'm of the belief that our character still simply retains and acts as an older brother type relationship, while Kuroi has begun to romantically be interested in our character. We find ourselves on the beach as well, hanging out. Turns out we finally learn more about her parents for this, and it seems like, with us by her side, she stood up to them and then explained her situation. And they're nice, which isn't exactly satisfying or the resolution I wanted given what we see and heard about her experience as a child in their care. We tell her that we just enjoy being her big brother, and we make a slight joke about her growing out of our assistance, to which she emphatically says that she wants us to always be together, and so that she can grow strong by our side. So now here comes the ending that I ended up picking first, before going back and doing the other 7. So deciding to stay in hell to reform it becomes a group effort as everyone decides to stay together, helping out Henry, so we cut to the last new art of the game, in which we're joined by everyone in a central room. I'd also like to note somehow our character has brown hair, which makes me think that there are two reasons our model has changed. One being that a gradient of white hair is imposed on the instructors in Hell, as both our MCs have white hair. Miyu has very light gray hair, and Maya has black hair, and what we've seen of Criminal Girls X character is a black and white cat, is likely the instructor in that role. I think that, or to help with the players connect with the MC and envision themselves in the harem role, brown and black hair is the most common, so they just chose it. That's why you see it so frequently in anime and other media, because it's quote-unquote relatable. Anyway, the ending, we find ourselves surrounded by everyone, including Enri. We've apparently fixed Hell, most of the convicts and delinquents are out, including Maya in a throwaway line. Everyone then seemingly divvies out who gets to spend some individual time with you, and they also throw out a new process called cultivation as an addendum to the Reformation program. This doesn't seem to be continued in the sequel, or at the very least, the girls involved in the sequel aren't a part of that system, I don't believe. So, Criminal Girls X. Escape from Ashura is also another title it used. I haven't played it, obviously, as I illustrated earlier, and even if I could, I'd have a hard time considering that the version released was in Japanese, and I'm unsure if there was an English language setting within the game yet. This means what I'm going to be discussing is purely, or rather somewhat speculative, as I only have a translated English page and a handful of other predominantly Japanese articles on the game to reference. In the end, we'll start with what was released as materials on the game. There was obviously a digital release that was generally given out to individuals who paid 6,480 yen, or roughly $59 before tax. 262 people bought this particular tier, and we have a 14,980 yen, or $136 tier, which provided a physical micro SD to install the game by 549 people. Now, there are higher tiers that supported the other two, but at a baseline we have roughly 800 individuals. At the bare minimum, we have either a download link, which seems to have been disabled, but if again true, there are a grand total of 549 copies of this game that are out there somewhere. The game also had several VR chat models one could purchase, an admittedly cool t-shirt, a box set which includes the game soundtrack, and apparently a PC version code which I'm curious about if it was compatible, a signed photograph with a cosplayer singer named Chamomile, a cool leather flight jacket, and a dinner party performance which 34 people I think were involved, if the rewards are correct. Obviously, as I've mentioned, the game was released and distributed via Android, and there did seem to be an iOS release, or at the very least a download for people who saw it, which unfortunately I only found out about this series now, and so I don't have it previously downloaded, and no one has distributed the APK yet for it. I've admittedly sent out DMs to people. I haven't gotten anything back regarding their SD. I hope someone eventually is willing to dump the SD online, and so other people can download the game. What do we know about the game itself? Well, here's the basic of the story. You are a man who wakes up in the realm of Ashura. You apparently entered there in order to save someone close to you before you in some way are given a job. You, of course, become the instructor, and the gods who are going to subject you to these trials steals your memories and turns you into a cat. The trial is to purify the 24 souls of these various girls and defeat an Oni. So there are, as 24 implies, a bunch of girls, 3 times the amount, at least, than the second game, and just shy of 3 times in the first, when you include Miyu and Himekami. The way combat seems to work, a camera follows you as you get on a motorcycle and begin to drive. You end up shooting floating orbs and then shoot the monster. There's occasionally there will be prompts in which you take action similar to the first 2 titles, and that's about as far as I can tell from an outside perspective, which admittedly seems somewhat shallow, which seems to be the sentiment of people who have played the game, though the story does seem to be a highlight from which most people recall, and what I'd say most people play the game for. As you fight the Oni, you'll be gathering memory fragments, which when combined reveal the memories of sin for the girls, helping them reform, and eventually, for your actions, you'll be given reward scenes, which likely contain the fan service elements that players so desired. Beyond that, there is very little information beyond the girls' names. Now, it turns out Mikage LLC was still active around this time, and even after they took down the original link with Arms Armory, a game which was harder to find information on than anything else because, just like Senki, which is another game they made, there's virtually no information on it, and what information there is, I have to translate from Japanese. Released apparently September 12th, 2023, and was terminated March 14th, 2024. The game lasted roughly 5 to 6 months. It was a browser-based game released on DMM.com, which releases a plethora of Japanese media, and was a free-to-play gacha. You seem to be some kind of leader in, I think, a military function, and you lead a group of anthropomorphized weapons, these being what you pull for throughout the game. The game seems to largely lie in the same erotica-esque character design of the other games, though it is distinctly more anime-esque than the other titles. The erotica in particular of this game is undergarments, which most of, if not all the girls within it, have visible in their character art, and is even quite apparent in the background of the menus. You play on grid-like patterns and fight a group of bug-like aliens, of which I have no idea what their goals are, but largely seems to be destroy the Earth, if I had to guess. It featured a turn-based mode in which you of course control your character, and an auto-battler mode. Girls' art is admittedly really good, featuring a chibi, a front art with equipment, and one without equipment, and a back with and without equipment. The game also featured apparently bedroom scenes after you can find the art on the wiki, which is nice, but a lot of the characters' art is missing completely, so it's kind of tragic that they're at least lost to me as far as I can find, since I can't see either the old page and I'm not Japanese and I'm struggling to write about this as well. Okay, writing this like 10 minutes after using a VPN. The DMM website just tells me it's gone as well, and the few links on the Internet Archive don't work. So it's about as lost as any other piece of media as I can find. There's also a game which looks like a spiritual successor called Cicatrice, which looks pretty neat, but also lacks an English release. It got a 7 out of 10, so it's in line with the other past titles in terms of scoring, so could be interesting if you can read Japanese. That largely sums up the news, so if you guys are interested, I'd suggest keeping an eye out for any news or if anything got a hold of an APK. So now there's one last rabbit hole. Criminal Girls Busei. There was a fourth game I found during my research, and going down a deeper rabbit hole with Mikage LLC, I found yet another title, Criminal Girls Busei, as I mentioned, which I think is the German word for penance, apparently. It was released between Criminal Girls 1 and 2. More specifically, it released alongside the invite-only edition of the first game, as a purchase of invite-only had a code which granted you access to a character within that game. Even more specifically, the game was released on January 6, 2015, and its service ended May 29th, 2015 at 3 PM, lasting just about 4 months, which, just like Arms Armory, I have no idea why it was terminated, its service, but seems to be a decision made by DMM. DMM, again, just like Arms Armory, are the ones who released Criminal Girls Busei. So unlike the other games, this one, ironically, is one of the few with an actual interview, though this seems to be by Nippon Ichi and not Mikage himself. It appears as though DMM Games was the one who approached Nippon Ichi about making a title, and if I had to guess, commissioned the game from them. In fact, I'm relatively positive about this, as in the interview with 4Gamer, it's revealed that Mikage wasn't the director or producer of this title at all. Kibara D, who was the DMM lab director at the time, seems to be the head who worked on the title, specifically alongside Shirobara P, who seems to be the direct connection to Nippon Ichi. In the interview as well, there is Tatanushi Yoshinori, who worked mostly on the PSP and Vita games, as well as Kenzo Tsuruhashi, who was the head of sales and relayed information between the two companies. They looked to DMM specifically in order to lean more into the ecchi side of things, of the game and all that, and thought after seeing the success of Kontai Collection, which leans closer to Arms Armory if anything, and was likely the inspiration behind that game as well, I might add. So to be clear, DMM developed this game, not Image Pooch, who was formerly Mikage's employer and his company, it seems. As for the story, I can't interpret it from the videos of the games I found, of course because it's in Japanese, but according to the interview, it seems our character is a proper instructor who ends up summoning delinquents to be reformed, hence the gacha elements of the game. There, upon initial release, was 40 different girls to obtain, and at the beginning of the game, you get to pick one character in a small assortment. The game also, of course, features the motivation system, with a bunch of variation, like spanking, water gun, cattle prod, feather duster, mud thing, vibrating apparently, healing massage, whatever that means, and wax, with the exception of the vibrating. All of these are featured in the first and second game, so nothing is new. There is another feature with the motivations damaging the clothing, and that being effectively an outfit option you can now select, which was admittedly a nice touch. Continuing with the interview, we see a handful of the kind of criminal girls Bible that they had, which is stripes are necessary in character design, to emulate, of course, prison uniforms, though there is a lone character who doesn't seem to quite have stripes, or at least have them on her outward appearance, so it's not necessarily a perfect Bible. We also see the girls in the first game appear in the title, which is crazy, and they're not in their knight uniforms, interestingly, which I'm not sure if that means that they are sent back to hell, or if they lose their knight status, or that in this reality they somehow never obtained it, but they act as guides for the other girls within Busei. The game also wasn't fully voiced. You had voices for the battle and punishment system, but there was none in the dialogue. Summoning also wasn't a summon-only system. As you play, you apparently earned sin points, which you could then combine to summon a girl. Not sure how it entirely works again. Combat and the world also seem to use the 7 deadly sins as an element, in which certain ones of course have advantages over others, like typings. But I can't see how they interact with one another, at least, again, I don't know how to read. Now, the girls are of course being reformed. They have wishes and the like, which directly seem tied to the wishes and the character events, after which an auto-translate calls it awakening happens. But the girls effectively become knights and are likely stronger than before. Again, I couldn't tell you what the story was like given Japanese, but I don't know if it ever even got an ending given its short lifetime. Criminal Girls Busei seems to have no real presence within the West, its short lifetime not helping that, being again 4 months, and there were all of 2 articles written in English about it, at least from what I can find out as well, with the Japanese audience not really talking about this one, or the story for that matter, mostly focusing on the more lewd parts, obviously. So what info I have is in a wiki that was created, and I'm going to be completely honest, is practically useless unless you want the basic stats of the characters and some of the, but not all of the artwork, so that's a bit of a problem. The thing is though, that while there's barely anything on YouTube, there's a bit of a video on Nico Video, a Japanese video website that apparently is pretty popular. To what extent, I have no idea, but a lot of the parts missing in the wiki, so a lot of the stuff I've mentioned has been sheer inference from what I can find. Maybe I'll do a deep dive on my own at some point and compile the actual story, though if anyone has beaten me to it, I'd love to hear about it. Now, that's all I know about Criminal Girls as an insane series with a lot of loose ends that don't have any way for me to really continue looking down. I'd love to get my hands on the somehow dead games or a copy of Criminal Girls X. Translating that, however, would be the biggest problem in my endeavors to enjoy it, but methodically I think I could do it. So as per what will become the usual, I'll leave a script and my citations in said script in the description below. If you feel like contacting me about the game for whatever reason, the email that the doc is attached to is probably the best way, maybe, but I hope you enjoyed. I'm still working on other videos, so hopefully I'm done with those much faster than these, as I'm working on them in tandem. I may move to doing more short-form stuff, focusing on single games and using much less research on those, and more opinion. I definitely have a video I've all but finished, but I haven't gotten around to editing it, so I'll probably do that soon. We'll see. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. Carver, out.